feet.
Oh, yeah, good, I like that.
The only thing is, I don't know if it's muscle.
That's, we're working off.
No, I know.
Yeah, yeah.
Then there's the Saturday.
Sunday night, so we're over his client, Sunday night, it's Boston, and it's just like, I don't know if they're gonna actually make it to Boston.
Okay, it is 6 o'clock on Tuesday, February 18th, 2025. I'm calling to order the Select Board and Board of Public Works meeting. We are meeting in the lower level of the Rutland Public Library. All 5 members are in person tonight. This meeting is being recorded by town staff, as well as we have Zoom access available now for participation, and we are being recorded for re-airing on local access television as well as YouTube and other social media outlets. Can we please stand for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will move right into minutes, treasury warrant and payroll. We have approval of treasury warrants 25-17 and 25-PW17.
Make a motion to approve treasury warrant 25-17 and 25-PW17.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Questions, comments, concerns?
Yeah, just, Madam Chair, just a few notes for this warrant. Our next Bay Path assessment of just over $115,000 is on this warrant. Rutland's proportionate share of the Route 56 Molten Pond Dam replacement project, which is just over $300,000, that is included on this warrant. And as well, we are getting close to expending. This warrant will be 81% of our snow and ice budget is expended. I suspect the winter weather that's happened over the past few days, we are in deficit spending mode. So I'll give some updates over the next few weeks on what that looks like, and you'll see those on your budget reports as well, but just want to be mindful of that as we continue through the next few months.
And just as a note for the public as well as the board, snow and ice is the only account I believe that we're allowed to deficit spend. So per MGL, everything else needs to be allocated, but snow and ice has the exception to be able to be deficit spent. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Roll call, Harry.
Second, aye.
Mattson, aye.
Ledger, aye.
Galvin, aye.
Whitman, aye. We have approval of meeting minutes from the February 3rd, 2025 regular meeting. I believe this was Jen, Harriet, and I. Paul and Tom, if you feel comfortable voting, by all means, I think for minutes that's totally acceptable. I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve February 3rd, 2025 regular meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Anyone have any conversation or questions, concerns?
Yes, I have a question. I thought I was listening pretty good to the minutes, but I came across something I wasn't sure, and I just want to confirm this with Tamika. On Chief Seth Knipe and Deputy Chief Ryan Quinn, they came here to request a grant for establishing or interviewing a fire district, if you will. And one of the comments here, it says, once established, fire districts have their own taxing authority, which would be created via legislative act. So that taxing authority is away from the town, is that correct? Did I read that correctly?
I can't answer that question. I can just say Chief Knight said that, but I can't answer that question.
So I think, just to give a little bit of information, that is one of the models of a fire district. There's several different models. I think they also reference that some fire districts are tied to water districts, which have, I guess, the equivalent of their own taxing authority, but they're set through water rates similar to our water department. That's one of the mechanisms. Others just conduct assessments based off of population, very similar to our dispatch district or school district, for example. But what is in the minutes is just one of the many examples.
Okay. Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Roll call, Harry.
Second, I.
Mattson passed.
Ledger I.
Gilman, aye.
Whitman, aye. Thank you. I believe we have been asked, asked Recreation to come to talk a little bit on the building use policy. As you know, we've met with the library as well as Council on Aging and the Senior Center. We thought it was prudent to have Recreation come in also. So they're here and I believe they have some time constraints. So if the board is amenable to taking Recreation out of order to Recreation and Safe Place to hear their kind of perspective on the building use policy.
I have no objection as long as we can get through fast enough, because I have a personal issue with my wife, I have to get home by 8 o'clock. So I wanna get into doing the budget, so I'm hoping they won't take too long so we can get into the budget.
Karina and Sarah, thank you for coming. I don't know if you've been following kind of our building use conversation. We're trying to revisit our policies. Last year we focused on the bylaws. This year we're trying to focus on some policies. One of the big one, I think, as you guys are aware of, is the building use policy. So kind of understanding from a recreation safe place perspective, the challenges or the wants and needs of your programming as far as a building use policy, not necessarily the actual buildings, but the use policy. I think would be an important piece for us as we move forward with the policy.
So mainly right now, Recreation mainly uses school buildings for space. We're not usually approved to use library because we charge fees for programs. However, the fees are only to cover the cost of the programs and, our administrative overhead, so we don't really have the option to run too many free programs. We have been able to use the library for like photos with the Easter Bunny, things like that. Small one-time things. Also, it's hard because we can't like reserve the library for more than, I think it's been a while since I've done it, but for like multiple time slots out into the future. That doesn't, most of our programs and activities are, repetitive in nature, so we have to wait until one time slot goes by to reserve the next one. It doesn't really give us the dependability to schedule things through the library. The senior center, we haven't used that since 2020, so it's been taken off the table. I used to handle the calendar for that building, so I'm familiar with the policy and the procedures from that were previously in place. So that's kind of, I don't know if you have specific questions or.
So does the board have any, I have a couple questions, but I'll let the board kind of.
No, I know with our meeting with the library, I know it came up that in the past, you guys have been denied a lot of access to the space because they made it sound like it was a for-profit, which it's not. It's a non-profit.
Right.
Revolving fund that funds its own program. So I hope that the conversation we had with the library cleared that up a little bit. And along with this new scheduling program, hopefully that gives you a better opportunity of what you need.
One thing that came out of the library conversation is the library trustees kind of manage the library space. They had an updated policy that was on the library website but not on the town website. And so we've asked to have that connected to the town website as well. And for them to kind of re-look at and kind of open the conversation again with Recreation to understand your needs and how that might work, because we did bring up that there are other groups sometimes that meet here that are very closed for specific groups or not necessarily for profit, but that are charging some sort of fee or something. And so to just have continuity in the policy across the board and understanding some of the constraints that Recreation has in access to the school buildings during certain times of the year and everything also, and the proximity to the pool and the playgrounds and the fields and everything for
Right.
summer camp.
Yeah, our needs, during the summer especially, we only have the school up until like through July basically, because they're cleaning and stripping the floors and waxing the floors and everything like that, so we can't really be in the schools. There's kind of I feel like there's a perception that, you know, we just have free rein to the schools, but the schools have their own programs going on. We're pretty much maxed out with school space between the programs that we have going on already, so you know, if anything else comes up, I have, you know, instructors that wanna run smaller programs all the time, but I can't always fit them into, you know, the availability of school space.
Another thing that had come up, and it was through a public comment, at our last meeting, was just access to the building on Glenwood, for space, for half-day after-school care, and everything, and I think that that's another piece, you know, we had that conversation a little bit, that's another piece that I think a lot of residents look for, parents especially, is care on half days and even school vacation weeks that the schools might be closed because of cleaning or whatever, but is there an option or a way to be able to diversify and offer additional programming through, you know, the high needs times or whatever. So I don't know if that's come to, you know, Sarah with Safe Place and Karina with.
We've had people reach out here and there more for the half days, like the 4 or 5 that we have a year. Unfortunately, most of my staff are also employed by the district, so they are obligated to attend the professional development on those days, or the school itself might be the location of the training for the district, so we've never done that. I know that the PTO at both schools are looking to start doing that in March, where they're gonna use the library for Naquag kids, and they're hoping to use the community center for Glenwood kids. But I'm hearing there's a little bit of kickback for the community center, so I'm not sure what their plan is.
Yeah, and we have, like, it just depends on the schools and the needs of the schools. Like, we have, because one of the custodians is working through February vacation, we actually have 2 programs running during February vacation, but it's just so much is dependent on, you know, things out of our control completely, so it's just kind of, we're patching together what we can at the moment.
As far as, I think Austin and Tamika and town staff are working on the online reservation piece and everything. I think Karina, you had said that you had been managing at least the building on Glenwood through 2020. Were there significant challenges kind of as that reservation manager? And I think you also manage field space also, is that correct?
I do, yeah, I do schedule the fields. It was only for a couple of years. I wanna say like I stopped doing it in 2018. But it really wasn't, I didn't find it an issue. I just kept a Google Calendar and people got me their forms, and it's kind of the same way we manage the fields. It's not that many requests that we would get, so it wasn't too bad. I'm all about online scheduling though, so that's how we do my pool parties now. We have our own reservation system for that sort of thing, and that's super easy, so yeah, I think that's a benefit too.
Does anyone on the board have any questions or
Thank you for being here tonight. How many children or students do you have that go through the program?
Which program?
Individuals, total?
Well, I mean, so
Are you between Safe Place and Recreation? Because that's divided up, right?
Yeah.
2 separate
Okay.
programs. I would say for Safe Place, we serve probably 130 kids a day, but I have more than that registered. Some kids don't attend every single day.
Okay.
and I mean, so our recreation programs involve various kind of like classes and activities that people sign up for, so, you know, it could be that, you know, we have one program that has like 32 kids a week in it. We have another program that has, you know, we have Legos, we have dodgeball, we have a sports club, we have an art club, basketball, yeah.
I mean, summer camp
Yeah, we have
alone.
like a social skills group. We have 100 kids in summer camp a day throughout the summer. We have 2 weeks of summer camp. We have more kids on the wait list than we have signed up because we don't have access to the schools, so we're limited to whatever shelter. You know, we do have the tent, we have plenty of outdoor space, but we can't count on that. If we have thunder and lightning, we have to be inside a structure, like a solid permanent structure. So, you know, we're just limited to how many kids we can put in the town hall basement, basically.
So your limit is really facility, it's not staff.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can get enough staff to do what
I
you
could
want.
definitely get enough staff. I mean, I
Okay.
have like 30 people interview for 2 camp counselor positions every year, basically. So, yeah, we have lots of staff.
And you, if I may, I think Recreation used to run a lot of adult programming also, that would happen in the evenings, that I know a lot of adults, kind of even teenagers through senior citizens, participated in and really appreciated, and that's lost because you don't have access to any space. Is
Right.
that
That's correct.
correct also? So I think you've said before, you view recreation as kind of a birth to death entity
Yeah,
and not
absolutely.
solely kids. And it's unfortunate maybe that it's become so kid focused in Rutland because of the space constraints and the divisiveness that there is. So I think trying to figure out ways to provide recreation opportunities for all ages and stages is
Yeah, for sure.
important.
Follow-up? What is your greatest constraint, facilities or fields?
Facilities, definitely. We don't,
Facilities?
yeah, the recreation department itself doesn't do a lot of field sports kind of things. That's left to the sports organizations in town. So, and I find, I mean, I don't wanna speak for them, but generally, we work out field space. I'm sure they would love more and better fields, but for the recreation department, that's not that's not a concern at this time.
I think different communities do things differently, where sometimes the field sports are encompassed under recreation
Right.
as within the town. And I think a lot of the smaller communities have them spun off as their own nonprofits, like we do here with
Yeah.
football and baseball and soccer and lacrosse, and even hockey and stuff,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, definitely.
And then there's obviously the premier leagues as well, so.
Right.
We had somebody here at the last meeting wanting to run an event at the senior center through the PTO. Do you get involved with the PTO? Do you oversee that? Do they, or what?
No, they're their own organization. We donate to the basket raffle and help out with things like that when we can, but we don't really have
Person
any
running
sort of.
Yeah, there's not
Yeah,
really a connection
yeah.
there. The person that came to the meeting, she did come into our office to chat, just kind of about the half-day program and making sure she wasn't stepping on toes if we were looking to run our own program, and just talk about the logistics of how it would work.
Thank you.
Does anyone else on the board, I mean, I think we're trying to collect information to try to figure out the policy. So I appreciate you coming in to kind of address your needs and concerns, and know that it's an ongoing piece of work.
Right, for sure.
So I don't know if we also have on here, the Recreation Senior Center facility. I don't know if you wanted to stick around for that, or my main concern was having your input on the building use policy tonight, but I don't know what your desire is.
I can stay.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions for the building use policy? I'm hoping that with this information, we kind of can, over the next couple meetings, as we continue to work on budget and everything, also work on moving this policy as well as a couple others forward. Thank you. We have, hopefully these will be a couple quick items if we can, board and committee appointments and resignations. We have an agricultural commission, we have a letter of interest and recommendation for Mr. Kevin Miller. Is Kevin here? Hi.
How are you?
Thank you for attending.
You're welcome.
And thank you for your patience tonight with us. We see that you have submitted an application. I believe that you were able to attend an agricultural commission meeting. And this would be, somebody's phone ringing. Okay. Sorry, guys. So this would be for that, is this a full seat on the Agricultural Commission?
I believe it's an alternate seat.
I thought so. But yes, so the Agricultural Commission has full seats as well as alternates that are able to fill in for issues if the full member is unable to attend or participate in the meeting. So we have the letter of interest and the recommendation from the Agricultural Commission itself. Is there any questions for Mr. Miller?
Just a quick question. How did you like your first meeting you went to?
It was fine. The building was warm, so we were good.
Did you feel like you were in the right place, given your credentials?
Sure.
Did you? Okay. Great.
Thank you. I love seeing new interest and you have a really intriguing background, so
Thank you.
I appreciate that also, so thank you. Is there any other questions or conversation? If not, I would entertain a motion
So moved.
to appoint Mr. Miller to the Agricultural Commission with a term expiring June 30, 2025 as an alternate member.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other conversation? Roll call. Harry?
Second, aye.
Mattson, aye.
Ledger I.
Galvin, aye.
Whitman, aye. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
We also have a Council on Aging appointment. We have a letter of interest and a recommendation for Ms. Cheryl Rao, sorry if I mispronounced your name.
I don't see it.
See here?
Okay,
She was invited to attend.
okay. So we'll hold that. If she comes late, then we will take that, if the board is amenable to that. Otherwise, we can try to schedule again. Per our policy, we ask that all the interested parties attend our meeting of appointment. If the board is amenable, we can take the building department out since we have Harold here. I believe, Harold, you have asked for us to look at the fee schedule review for our building permits and our licensing permits. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. You have it on the PDF or no, it's okay.
Oh, they have copies of it.
Okay, that's all matters. Okay, so I've been tasked with going over our building permits. This right here, I started July 22nd, and I noticed they were extremely anemic. Been asked to do this, took about from July 22nd to now to do this. I did do a rush job on the very end because we have a financial situation that I think we're all in this together, to be honest. I did go through all of the towns that are in our regional high school district, and each one of them is substantially more than we are. You have two outliers on that. Yeah, you always do the outliers. Average, taking the outliers out, Sterling is significantly more than what we are, it's 13. And Holden has a very interesting, it's a mathematical equation. It adds a lot of stuff to it. If you added everything, you would find that they're actually more than we are now too. So what I was hoping to do is put our building department fees in line with our surrounding towns and our surrounding our Wachusett group, our Wachusett Regional High School. I found that each one of those towns are at $10 per thousand of construction cost. The average in Massachusetts is $14 to $16, and right now we are at a fee base which is extremely low. We've been asked to remove $47,198 from our account for the greater good. I have no problem doing that at all. But I do believe that to account for that, there's a certain amount of hours and a certain amount of things that are required by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Mass General Law 143.3, and I hate quoting Mass General Law because you hear it all the time. I was a selectman, I used to totally kind of let that go over my head. But anyway, so the $10 per thousand is every unit of town that goes to our Wachusett our Wachusett Regional High Schools, and I do believe this right here is how, they have raised theirs 2 years ago and 3 years ago. I do believe this right here is how they're trying to budget, balance their budget. Right now, if we go through this, I have to cut my budget by $47,198. And I have to take everything I have, books, trainings, which are required by law, and alternates and all that. We have none of that. So I thought that would be good, right? No. And then I have to take $31,000 from our payroll. And that is $7,000 from each one of my inspectors and Lynn, and then $10,000 from me. And we're gonna have to cut our hours. Right now, we're at a shoestring budget, and I do believe this has happened before with the building department, because there's a large chunk of our permit fee, which I have no issue with at all, it's totally legal, that goes into the general fund. So to make this a level funded, or maybe even whatever we need to do. We do have ADUs coming in, new law. I don't know if you guys know about that or not, but I'd be more than happy to explain that to you. I'm teaching a course. And we have the amendment, the Dover Amendment. And if I get too technical, I really apologize. The Dover Amendment is losing the merger clause. So what that means, if you have a small piece of land, and it's been a small piece of land before your ordinance of zoning came in, those are now buildable lots. You don't have to combine them. So that's where we're at. So I'd love to take questions from every one of you.
Madam Chair, just to add on a few comments, I just want to be clear, I think we spoke a little bit about the budget situation. This is something that the Commissioner and I have been working on for months now, even before we've been talking about the overall budget situation. I think when recruiting Harold, I think it was clear, he looked at our fees and he said, "You're way out of whack, man." I think that's exactly what he said.
I did put me on it too.
And I think the proposal from the Commissioner is fair. Again, we're not looking to be higher than the average, we're looking to be the average. I appreciate the work that the Commissioner and Lane and his office have done research-wise, putting together this information. Simply put, we're looking to change the methodology for how we're calculating building permit fees. There is no methodology right now, to be honest, which is a little confusing for homeowners, for builders, and especially for staff. So this makes us uniform, makes us in line with some of the area towns, and will hopefully help us, as we know that development is going to happen over the next few years. It will help us with our financial situation in the future as well. So I fully support this request by Harold.
Thank you very much.
I think one thing that the board kind of over the past couple of years have also been looking at is our fees, and that we're covering the cost of doing business. And we had found oftentimes we weren't covering the cost of doing business, and all taxpayers were subsidizing that cost of doing business out of the general fund. And I think that that's not necessarily fair for all of our taxpayers. And when you come to look at, we kind of went through it with zoning, our ZBA fees and everything, and even our building. We know that there's a lot of discussion about building and development in town, and whether a person is building an addition or a deck or doing personal work at their existing personal residence, or developing new lots, to have the general fund subsidize that doesn't feel good, I think. And so I appreciate that, and also knowing that we are facing the budget constraints, and to have those cuts to the building department when we have so much building happening is going to slow business or create potentially unsafe conditions.
Right, I want to add one more thing also, if you don't, if the board, through the chair. The building permits, they do two things. First of all, they ensure safety, we don't guarantee, we insure. Okay, another thing is we capture new growth. That's one of the major issues. Now, if we miss permits, if we lower hours, and if we're gonna lower everybody else's hours, unfortunately, I'm the commissioner, I have to make this thing work. And I'm, in the immortal words of my good friend, Jim McGovern, he told me, he says, "Yeah, I sleep like a baby. I wake up every 2 hours and scream." It's one of them deals. But what I'm worried about, if we lose new growth, you lose it in perpetuity. So if it's $40, $50, you know, whatever for the permit fee, that we're not able to grab because we're not here, and they go and do whatever, and we don't catch them. And it happens still. I drive around and I see someone up there, I call Lynn, do they have a permit on that? No, okay, hey, what are you guys doing? You know, it's ripping everybody else off. So if we lose a $30,000 addition, and whatever the mill rate on that would be, you'll never see that money ever. And it's just a big pie. So that's why I came up with this. And Austin, you've been great on this. It's same with you, Tamika. But we don't, you know, as I said in front of this board, July 22nd, it says you need some real economic activity. You really do. By cutting the building code, you know, the building and all that, it's not gonna perpetuate that. We have been working with a group on the pizza joint right now. Talked to a code consultant this morning. We had a lot of interest in that. So it'd be nice to build that building up and then build other buildings up. You have a lot of potential here. Austin and myself, I'm the zoning officer here, so we're looking at along with John, we're looking at different roads. It's like, why wouldn't 56 be, you know, enlarged a little bit for commercial activity? Why would we do 68? Why wouldn't we do a 122 and 122A? I understand there's some watershed areas there. But if we open that up and say, hey, Rutland's out for business, I think that'll get us out of this GM also. Because the issue is, you don't have economic growth. And believe me, building houses it's not economic growth. But I'd love to hear some questions, because I'm kind of prepared.
Chair,
But, yeah.
when was the last time we updated this?
You updated in 2021, but it was so anemic. All it was, you went from 60 to 65 on single-family homes.
Okay, so.
It was nothing, no.
Okay.
Before that, we don't have I do believe, before, and I don't mean to interrupt, I hope I didn't. Before that, it was 20 years ago. And these are 20-year-old fees. And everybody knows it. And some of the contractors do work in other towns, they know. They kind of smile at us, oh yeah, where's Rutland? This is great. It is.
I notice in this, you have a penalty.
Yes, and we have yet to collect. I usually go in and say, hey, what are you doing? If they do this to me, okay, we have the penalty. I have yet to collect one.
Because they've all paid up when they were.
Well, everything was done, but you know, if you don't do, you know, you catch someone without a permit, I send it out of the building department first. If they don't go there, okay, then we do the penalty, but you know what? I'm kind of convincing. Say you need to do this, this, and this.
Okay.
Pays to be a big dude.
Well, I was curious as to, it was listed as twice. The penalty will be twice what the normal rate was.
Yeah, that's a normal thing. That's actually how
Is that
everybody
in
does it.
code, at mass law, or can it go higher?
You can go much higher. Again, section 109.3 says the building official will set the amount of the evaluation. So I can say, look, you didn't do this, we had to do this, I had to do this at this rate. So henceforth, we're gonna double the fee, triple the fee, or whatever. If it's repetitive, you know, I would love to, you know, give them that, but I have not written one out yet.
Good.
I try my best to work with people, I really do, so. But also the electrical fee and plumbing fees are a little anemic also, and I do have, unfortunately Lester passed away. He was working on it, I know Jim's working on it also, and now I have Dennis, our new guy, seems like a great guy. He's working on, look, go through the communities and find out what they are, and then maybe we can adjust that also. I'm not trying to squeeze anyone, I'm just trying to be fair, that's all.
I think we also would like people to recognize that if you're building a shed, you don't apply for a building fee, or you're putting an extension on or something like that, then it hurts everybody in the town.
Well, it does. Again, the two reasons for the building permit is, one, for ensuring safety.
Right.
Two, is collecting, you know, trying the new growth. And if I'm not here, you know, unfortunately, I mean, you know, it's a big cut, and, you know, I'll have to cut my hours. And I don't like doing that, but it's.
So are you saying with these improvements, what we're getting to is a level funded for next year?
I do believe this right here will do that.
We'll do that.
Me and Austin did, and more, because we actually did some of the calculations on that, And believe me, he made me prove everything in the building code. He really did. He says, well, can you show me that right here? Can you show me that right here? I'm a retired state guy, so
Yeah.
I know where the stuff is in the code.
Well, I want to thank you for the effort you put into this.
I appreciate the board.
It seems like it's something that should have been done years ago.
Yes.
So we are catching up.
Yep, not a problem.
And I appreciate it. I think that's one thing that we kind of, having professional staff is trying to be mindful of our fees and revisiting them periodically. To make sure that we're not falling way out of.
We have a fantastic staff, and I'd feel horrible if we ever lost any of them, because they know their stuff. I don't have to, I was talking to our new guy, we were discussing something this morning, and he's gonna find an alternate. I says, find someone you're comfortable with. I know people, but I says, whoever you're comfortable with, I'll back you up. So it was good. So please ask more questions.
Anybody have any other questions? If not, I would entertain a motion to adopt the revisions to the building department fee schedule as presented, effective March 1st, 2025.
So moved.
Motion and a second. Any other conversation? Roll call, Harry.
Second, aye.
Mattson, aye.
Galvin, aye.
Whitman, aye.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Harold. I
And it's
appreciate
for your
the work.
town, and we are all on this, we're in this together. We really are. Thank you very
And I
much.
appreciate the work you've been doing with Austin and John and everybody on the economic development piece as
And
well.
Lynn, and my little buddy Lynn. She's
Yes, I
awesome.
was gonna
She's
say.
unbelievable how good
The
she is.
entire department. Lynn is
Thank you.
glue.
Thank you again. I appreciate it.
Thank
By the
you.
way, my nickname is Harry also. I'm Harold.
It's
Together.
Harry,
No,
so,
we gotta stick together now.
okay. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Harold. I am looking to,
Madam Chair,
Yes.
public comment?
I was gonna say, we didn't do public comment, I'm not sure if we have anyone here for public comment. Name and address, please.
Sure, Kara Sombekos. I can spell it if you'd like.
I think Tamika might have it.
Yes, she does. 27 Davis Street. Hi, so I am here today, actually seeking support. This is my first meeting, so hello. Seeking support from the town and the public for a pet food donation box on public land. So I've been in communication with Andrea Castanetti of the Central Mass Pet Food Pantry out of Shrewsbury. They have been incredibly successful since they have begun all donation-based services, take what you can, or take what you need, leave what you can. But something that they're running into that has been very problematic is accessibility for more remote locations, such as us. But also because they operate as with volunteers, so they are only able to be open 4 hours a week because they are volunteer run. So what I would like to bring to the town is something similar to like the little free library that we are like seeing all over public properties and some private properties as well, but for pet food. So what I am picturing and kind of the prototype that we have built is one of those just generic 64 quart plastic tubs so that the food can be stored safely. That can be easily moved in and outside of a box, up off the ground, wood, weather resistant. I would love to have it somewhere accessible that is perhaps in the center of town, behind the police station, on the park, or in the park rather. Also communicating with the food pantry, the Rutland Food Pantry, to have an additional location, but again, that limits accessibility. So would love to kind of gather just any thoughts, questions, concerns.
Thank you. For public comment, we generally try not to make decisions or engage a lot, but I think I appreciate you coming and kind of bringing it as an idea forward. I'm not sure kind of what the process looks like to actually put it on public land. I think there's some questions I have as far that we as a board I think would want to explore, just the animal safety piece as far as like bears and raccoons and mice and rats and and all of that piece. And also the location, I don't know if it would make sense to have it at like DPW or something where there's already some public access, or if having it, to your point, in the center of town. I don't know that currently in town, any of the little public libraries are on public property. I think that most of them are on private. So I'm not sure how that works either. I think Tamika had provided you with some food pantry contacts also, and I hear your concern that that's kind of limited to distribution days and not kind of access as needed. So I don't wanna take away from that by any means, but I don't know if the board has any other kind of questions or ideas or anything to kind of continue to explore. I think it's a good idea, I think it's helpful personally to the community, but I don't know if the board has any other kind of opinions or questions that we wanna explore for a future agenda item.
I think I would personally, I would like if she could kind of put it in written format, what she's looking for from the town and submit it to the town.
I think there's been some email communication with Tamika already, so I think that that's probably already there, but as public comment, I think it was, this is the right avenue for it, so thank you.
Thank you.
Tamika has all of your contact info, so if there's additional questions or whatever, and we'll add it to a future agenda and then communicate back to you as far as when that is. And if you have like a website or a link for the existing Central Mass kind of food pantry, if you could pass it on to Tamika, just so any board members that are interested, if Tamika can send that around also, we can get an idea for it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else here for public comment? Nobody on Zoom. Okay, moving on. I know we have Historical Commission here. I know Recreation is here also. If we can bounce back to the Recreation Senior Center facility, discussion just because Recreation is here. I think Austin, you've talked to staff already though, so if we can do that. Austin, do you wanna?
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I think as most people are aware, we've tried to present the municipal services facility master plan and design project at November town meeting. That was not successful. I think some of the sentiment at the special town meeting was we need to have more of a focus on the recreational and senior center needs. There was a directive from the board to develop a scope of work and pursue a cost estimate for a project to accomplish those needs. So what is in front of you is a proposal from our consulting architectural engineer, Weston and Sampson, to conduct a space needs and feasibility study for recreation and safe place and senior center facility. I've also asked Weston and Sampson to include additional information more so for public input. So there's programmed sessions to provide for public feedback that Weston and Sampson will attend and present their findings. But this is also more in-depth to meet with department heads and also other stakeholders for those respective facilities. What will come of this is very similar to what came from the town hall and other senior center project is some program space in terms of a space needs matrix, and then also taking that into several different design concepts that will be presented to the public, and ultimately a report is presented to the board. The cost is $29,800. My proposal is utilizing existing previously approved town meeting article for senior center feasibility study, which was approved back in 2019 for $35,000. And the remaining cost to be split between the revolving funds for recreation and safe place. We don't have that division yet. I think we'll work with Karina and Sarah to as we over the next few months to determine what that number will be for the remaining 50%. So my memo kind of highlights some of the details of this study. I did speak with Karina, Sarah, and Nancy just to get their thoughts on this, to be able to move forward with this. Obviously, this is the beginning of multiple phases, very similar to any sort of building project, but before we start deciding what we need, we really need to understand what the needs are for the respective departments, both short-term and long-term. Especially more so for recreation. I mean, we just spoke to the needs for facilities. I think, well, both Karina and Sarah and Nancy wanna continue to grow their programs, they just don't have the adequate space. So I think something like this would allow for that feedback to be included in the study. And big picture, long term, we can design something that makes sense for the community. So to just asking for your support to move this project forward. And obviously, the three of us are here to answer any questions.
Is there any questions from this board? I think this came out of the feedback, as Austin mentioned, the feedback from the special town meeting in the fall, where we presented the facilities management and senior center presentation, and there was a lot of pushback and conversation that recreation wasn't included, that the seniors didn't feel like they were adequately represented, and so we had asked Austin to kind of take a look at a true recreation and senior center facility, and I've asked to be very clear to the department heads, staff, and the public, and boards and committees that they need to provide actual genuine feedback to Weston and Sampson, and that this is an actual, like, we wanna do something. And it's not gonna happen immediately, and there's grant opportunities that we're going to have to pursue or that we will pursue, but we need that honest feedback, and to sit in a meeting and say, well, I didn't know that I was supposed to say this, or share my actual wants and needs because I didn't think that that's what I needed to do, is not helpful. I think we, as town, have often just buried our heads in the sand and not moved forward with things because it's a tough situation, and we need that honest feedback from all the vested parties. And to Austin's point, not just where we are here and now, but also looking out. We know that we have a lot of incoming families and people of all ages who are looking for recreation, and we also know we have an aging population. And we have more and more 55+ communities being developed and everything, so there's that senior need also. And so I just wanna really reiterate that if this moves forward, which I hope it does, that the department heads and staff, the boards and committees, and the public are really genuinely open and honest with the consultants as far as the needs and wants, and knowing that it's not gonna be an immediate fix, but we're working to see what we can do and look for grant funding and everything also. And thank you, Karina and Sarah, for offering some of the revolving funds to facilitate that. We, as Austin also mentioned, in 2019, town meeting, I think, overwhelmingly approved $35,000 for a study for a senior center that has just been sitting. And so, but I think if we're looking at a facility that is combined, but in my head, combined but separate, but I don't know how that's gonna play out from the feedback from the public, how that looks. I appreciate kind of Recreation Safe Place also willing to bear some of that and allow some of that article money to remain, either to fund further work or to clear to free cash or whatever. So I appreciate that as well.
Yeah, and I'll say, since I've been in this town a little over a decade, I've been going to the meetings, and it's always, it seems like each individual group, whether it be the senior center, the rec department, whoever it is, it's an all or nothing proposal that comes to these meetings, and that's why they usually get shot down, in my opinion. It's time for everyone to honestly look at a study like this, try to get an honest engineering plan and study in place for the greater good down the road. Something is better than nothing, and I feel like every time a proposal comes in front of the town, somehow it gets shot down because someone isn't getting more than the other. And I think my stance has always been, recreation has an opportunity to, even if we can't get everything in grants, if we can get a loan to build a structure for the senior center recreation, we can bring in an income, so that at the very least, it'll pay for itself over time. Whereas a lot of these other things we're doing are coming out of the tax dollars, coming out of the taxpayers. So that's been my vision, that's what I've hoped for, and again, this is for the future, this isn't gonna affect any of us up here. By the time, even if we sign off on this, you're looking at years before something breaks ground probably, but I think it's a missed opportunity, I really do, with the amount of money. I mean, they're turning away children. They have, even with the library, I don't know why there's been a friction there over the years, I don't know why. These are our kids in town, these are our grandkids in town, so there's an opportunity. If you build these structures, if you build a building in town, I believe, Rutland Baseball rents Holden facilities, rents Paxton facilities. Wachusett football. We go all over the place to find space and indoor space. There's nothing in this area, so I think the opportunity's there to, at the very least, pay for itself. And I think if done and managed properly, you could turn a profit.
Well, to what you just said about like grant funding and stuff, the Department of Early Ed licenses the before and after school programs. They constantly have grants out there. We've gotten some of them, we did the playground at Naquag, but you have to have the space to utilize these grants. So many times I can't apply for them. We don't have a building, we can do something, but we can't touch the schools and change that. But if we had a facility, we could redo the playground over at Memorial Field or something like that. So we're just missing all these opportunities because we don't have space.
Yeah, we have to have, as a community, try and honestly look at the greater good for all of us, for our future, for this town. Because if we keep, if every little group in town keeps attacking each other for the little things, nothing gets done. It's just, we can't get out of our own way in this town. And, the damage is done as far as overdevelopment and all that stuff, that's another discussion. But if we don't bring some revenue into this town somehow, we're in trouble. We're in trouble.
Another thing to think about is, my kids have played sports for years and years, and every time I bring them to a clinic, every time I bring them to, an indoor soccer tournament for the day or whatever, I'm spending at least $100 in that town just on coffee, lunch, whatever. So the pool is the same way. Like, the pool brings a lot of people into the town that patronize other businesses as well. So, whether you're talking about renting out space to club teams or whatnot for their activities and events, or just hosting our own, it's bringing more people in that are gonna come and visit, spend money, see the
Or
town.
be out and wanna grab dinner while they're out or something.
Right, exactly, absolutely, like
I think also I know a few years ago, there was a lot of funding opportunities, I believe it's still the case, maybe not quite as much for senior center development also. So I think that there is a lot of grant opportunities out there. We can't just go and apply for all of that without having this need study. This is, to Tom's point, this is step one in a multi-year process. So I don't wanna lose sight that this is work that needs to happen, and it's the information gathering piece. We also know from the draft master plan and everything that both of these items are huge wants of the community as well. And so to just kind of continue to say we can't do it is not gonna, to Tom's point, benefit any of us ever. So do something now that will help us in the future.
Question? Austin, given our need for upgraded or new buildings in town, will Weston and Sampson be looking at existing buildings? For example, Naquag. If we should build another school, and it's taken us years to go down the road, depending on how our enrollment goes and Wachusett goes, would we be looking at converting Naquag, where it's a huge building, if we have to move from there? Would they be looking at that?
So I don't wanna speak for what the study's conclusions will include, right? I think that's a great suggestion that I've heard also at the Council on Aging. That proposal came up. I don't think it's a bad idea. I think that it should come up and be decided by the group and by the study. Really what this is gonna look like is space needs and program space. And then when we come to a decision point about, let's say Naquag is replaced, and there's an open space there, well, look, we've got plenty of program space for senior center, town hall, recreation. If it could all fit into Naquag, perfect. If not, then the community would make a decision. But it'll certainly look at respective locations. I think Memorial Field was mentioned. There's some space on Glenwood Road. Naquag is one, the Heights property is another property, so it will look at site possibilities and establish the feasibility of those respective sites, but it'll just be in the form of a report, and ultimately it's gonna be the community's decision to advance, whatever they think is best, so. But that's gonna come up by the project team and by the stakeholders that are affected by this study.
Follow-up question? Will Weston and Sampson be looking at third-party involvement? Somebody out there who wants to get involved and build this thing for us?
Like a public-private
Like
partnership?
a public-private partnership, will they be looking at that?
No, so I think that this study, it's a little early to establish that relationship, right? I mean, I think that there's plenty of opportunities, not just in Central Mass, I think like North Shore, also Cape Cod, South Shore, that area has a lot of developers that are in that business. But we don't have anything to go to them with, right? That's, I think, why it's important to establish this, so we can go with some sort of a proof of concept, if you will, and say, hey, look, we've kind of advanced this project, are you interested in joining us? So it's a little early to go there, I think it's a great opportunity, certainly for Rutland. There's certainly been, I think, organizations that have been interested in Rutland in the past. Maybe this is something that we can partner with them on in the future.
Okay.
But that probably won't come up in this study, just to be candid.
I'm just saying, but it's not off the radar. It's on the radar, just not in
Anything
this
is
study.
possible, Larry.
Okay.
I think a couple things, I think moving something like this forward shows kind of the town's commitment to actually, above and beyond just a conversation, that we're committed to this. And also this came out in the municipal services study also, just reusing existing buildings often we know it has a higher cost per square foot for redevelopment than building new. And so I wanna be careful that we don't run into a situation where we continue to put essentially lipstick on a pig, for the metaphor of, every time something happens to the building on Glenwood, it's, $30,000 to $100,000 repair because it's so much worse than what we thought. And so I wanna be just mindful that anything that we do isn't going to have the long-term burden on the increased burden on the community.
But that will come out in the study, right?
Yep.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
I'm absolutely on board. I think having a combined space, I mean, it's all recreational needs, regardless of your age bracket. That's what it's for. So I think we're moving in the right direction to have some sort of a combined facility. I don't know if it's part of this particular study or if it would need to be done just within our own town staff, but I would like to see some sort of plan for the operational side of the department, if you will, if we're going to seriously consider moving forward with having a senior center rec facility that's gonna be used for everybody within the community. I don't wanna have what we currently do, which to me, I'm sorry, is very disparate, headbutting departments and use of space. So I would like to see some sort of forward movement on collaboration, how can they work together as a single department, what that structure might look like, to make sure that everybody is being, everything's equitable as far as, offerings, space utilization. And again, I don't know if any of that operational piece is part of this, would be as part of the study, or if that's something that we just need to figure out on our side. But I think that, in my opinion, is something we can even start to look at now ahead of this. I know that's something that we've talked about in some of our conversations, Austin, is just efficiencies, how can we help combine efforts, programming, just being more efficient with what we offer in some of the space concerns.
Yeah, it's it has to be properly managed. I mean,
Yes.
that has to be
Yes.
part of the plan. It just
Yes.
can't be a structure that,
Right,
hey, it's my turn today,
right.
it's your turn next. No, it can't be like
No,
that. It can't be another library.
No.
No, you can only use it if this, and this works. No, it has to be properly managed in order to work, in order to, so.
And I
you-
think as we look at kind of the budget conversations and everything and kind of get creative with the staffing designations and everything also, I think that that's an opportunity, Jen, to your point, to look at the way maybe that whole human services piece works or something, if it's recreation, council on aging, veterans, even the library to a certain degree, because those are all kind of the human services piece. I don't know what that looks like, but I think that it's an opportunity on the facility side as well as the management side for continued conversation.
And Austin, you've said there are plenty of towns that have done this, right? That, didn't you mention a few communities?
Like a consolidated department?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not
Out of the
new.
ordinary,
Right,
right?
it happens, people have to
Yes.
consolidate, yeah.
Yes, it's not a new
And usually, so just to give you usually that does come in the form, hate to say it, but another study. Seriously.
You can just sit on all the study.
Yeah, I mean, so we are currently studying regional HR with CMRPC. CMRPC is well known for doing sort of organizational structure studies. Collins Center also does a lot of that work as well. And, you know, I think it kind of takes our current staffing in mind and then very similar to this kind of future. And matches services that are related and make sense to come together, right? It doesn't make sense to put rec with the fire department, or maybe it does, I don't know.
I don't know,
Right, but that does come in the form of a report to the select board. Ultimately, it would come in the form of kind of a reorganization plan that would come to the board, and I don't know if it's said in our bylaw that sometimes reorganization plans actually have to be approved by town meeting. I don't believe we have that here.
Might go in the charter though.
But certainly, and that would be just kind of even beyond my analysis, department's analysis. I think we'd also kind of have a third party take a look at that and provide their professional recommendations as well.
Paul, did you have a?
Have anything come to the town's attention regarding the rest of the hospital property? In other words, you know, there's property there that's being unused, and we're wondering, you know, what are the plans that have come forth on this, or have there been any thoughts or anything else coming down the road on it?
I'll say nothing serious. I think we've had a lot of, and certainly I would defer to RDIC on that. They may have a little bit more in-depth conversations than what I have heard, but folks that have come to the town, I think, have lightly investigated potential uses, but we haven't had any follow-up from them. Beyond just kind of the initial investigative phase, if you will.
You know, there's open space there that could be used for athletic fields and that sort of thing. On one side of the road and on the other side of the road, there is basically all the things that you would need to support a building of something like a senior center or something along those lines. You know, it's all there, it's all in the ground, it's there and ready to use, you know. So I mean, you know, it just seems like it's sitting there and it's sitting there and it's sitting there, and people say, you know, are there any plans about it? And honestly, I have to say no, there's nothing that we've been made aware of.
Yeah, other than the reuse plan from the late 90s. And then I do believe CMRPC or maybe the marketing firm, real estate marketing firm, put together a concept development brochure that kind of showed a lot of the things that you just spoke of, Paul. And I believe that was used in 2019 when there was an RFP that was issued to seek proposals from outside vendors, which led to Harmony Place project. We haven't done an RFP since then. I think they would take a little bit of investment from the community, maybe using some of the funds for additional development purposes, but everything that we've heard is just from word of mouth, or someone sees something pop up or they drive by and they stop by and see what is possible there.
That's basically what I'm hearing as well, so yeah, okay. Thank you.
We're getting more interest in the pizza place than the Heights property, to be honest.
Does the IDAC run the pizza place?
I was just gonna say,
I just throwing it out there, I don't know.
I wasn't gonna say it, Paul, but you did.
Oh, I have no problem saying it, Harry, you know that.
Are there any other questions in regards to the study as Austin has presented? If not, I would entertain a motion to authorize Austin to move forward with the department heads, Recreation, Safe Place, and Council on Aging department heads to work with Weston and Sampson for the pragmatic study for the Rutland Council on Aging, Recreation, and before and after school programs proposed architectural services as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Any other conversation? Sorry, can I?
Yeah, I just have one. I don't, Austin, I don't know who we hired the last time to do the last one, but I am hoping that their notes and documentations will be forthcoming as part of the overall plan when it's done, because we didn't get that the last time. So I'm hoping that a full dossier will be available for something like this, because this is big.
So yeah, I think I sent it to you guys, but the full report is available on the project website.
Right, but the notes and all that stuff that we wanted to know how it was put together, the discussions with the different committees, and we didn't have any of that.
You gotta take a look at the report.
It's there
It's in
now?
there, yeah. Yep.
Okay, all right, I just wanna make sure that this time it fully shows up, that's all.
Yeah, well, and as I mentioned, just one final thing, right, there'll be public input sessions as well, right? Which I think a good opportunity would be to work with cable to record those and also have that as a part of the project process as
Okay.
well, right? So all of that will be included in the final report.
Can I just clarify the cost piece? Is there anything that we need to do further for approvals, or that's all part of, we're taking some of the appropriations from the existing?
Not now, to be honest, I don't even know if I need your approval for that.
Okay.
I think the 50% is well within the original
Yep.
The full amount
scope.
is, honestly, the full amount is well within
Yeah.
the,
When the time comes, when it's time to pay the bill, we will come back to the select board and finance committee to raise the spending limits for the revolving funds, but I wanna work with both Sarah and Karina to determine what those amounts are. We don't need to address that yet, but when the bill's due and we need to make payment, we'll come back to the board then.
Thank you.
thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns? We have a motion and a second, roll call, Harry,
Second, aye?
That's an aye.
Ledger, I.
Galvin, I.
Whitman, aye. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah and Karina. Thank you for sticking around tonight, sorry to keep you. Thank you. Alright, now we are bouncing all over the place, let me just see. We have the joint meeting with the historical commission, are we okay to open that with historical commission and get them moving as well?
I'd like to, no, I object to that. I'd like to move into the budget, which is next on the list.
Okay. Sorry, guys. Welcome to the budget conversation. Austin, have at it.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I wanna turn most of this discussion to you folks to consider the budget, but just a few updates that have come since I think we last spoke about the budget. There's been a reduction in the estimated assessment for Wachusett Regional School District to the tune, I'm gonna round up and say about $200,000. And there's been a slight increase to the Bay Path assessment of approximately $40,000 from what my projections were. So our net deficit or net position is slightly down from when we last spoke. It's still around 2.2 million. Those are the only two changes to the draft budget at this time. And I can speak in a little bit more detail about either the school assessments if you have further questions, and of course any other questions on the budget that you may have.
Sorry, if I may, Leah.
Yeah.
Can you just clarify, the 200 for WRSD, is that for the entire school budget or Rutland's portion?
Rutland's portion, our assessment.
And I think if I may, based on kind of the conversation at the last kind of budget discussion with the school, obviously things at the state level are still in flux, and so this is the numbers that they have working off of the most current state numbers. There's advocacy to increase some of the per pupil spending, but we don't have that information yet. I believe last time they increased that, but something else decreased slightly. So I think that this would be the most kind of conservative projections, what Austin has. Is that, Austin, your kind of understanding as well? I think we had, at our previous meeting, Austin had presented a kind of cut budget that the board had asked for, essentially the $2.2-ish million cuts to town services, and we see that it's decimating. Even anything really over $500,000 in cuts is decimating. when we have so many fixed costs that are just ballooning. Insurance and retirement are the two big drivers of that. The school districts are feeling that push, that pinch as well. So I think we rescheduled our FinCom and Select Board kind of joint conversation. The previous conversation, FinCom was kind of, it was earlier in the process. FinCom was, at the time, seemed to be pushy or leaning towards recommending an override. And what that looked like, we weren't sure. Austin had provided us some multi-year projections for different override scenarios and what that may look like and how long that may last. We heard a lot of feedback that the previous override didn't last kind of as long as it was quoted to last. My caution there is that that previous override was really a restorative override. It got us back to where we were, kind of minimum staffing for where we should be for a community of this size and activity. And the projections that were used, I think a lot came from the state that had been commissioned in a study previously. The state didn't take into account any of the regional agreement, school district regional agreement funding. So I think that budget projections were on the low end. Austin, I believe it was about 4%, which is 4 to 5%, which is on the low end of the total school increase in their total budget. Obviously, Rutland's portion for Bay Path as well as for Wachusett is generally more than the 5% of the total budget. And didn't take into account anything other than essentially a COLA for all employees. So it didn't take into account any of the CBA agreements, step increases, liens, anything of that nature, as well as any renegotiated, or the fact that we had a new union come into town. So none of that was taken into account in those original projections. So in working with Austin and seeing his model in real life when he had the numbers from the school and seeing how close his model was in relation to the school projections, I think we're really, really fortunate as a community to have staff, administration and staff, both in town as well as at the districts, both Bay Path and Wachusett, who are willing to do the work and try to provide us with honest, accurate, long-term information as best as they can. I think it's been, this in my experience has been the first kind of administration on both sides have been willing, on all sides that have been willing to work together to really understand the funding formulas. Education's 60% of our budget. That's across the state. That's take out the cities and the gateway communities. 60% is where we are across the state. So that's a tough piece to try to chip away at. A lot of other communities prioritize their municipal services through overrides, periodic overrides. It's not a favor at all in town. Nobody, I don't think anybody likes to pay more in taxes. And we know the economic situation is volatile at best currently. But we also see what the cuts side of things look like. So I think that's kind of the communication that I'm hoping that we can start with as far as what the board's looking for, and go from there. We rescheduled our meeting, I think everybody saw the email from FinCom for March 6th. That will be the department head kind of speed dating, as Austin refers to it, with the department head presentations and everything. But as far as, you know, conversation with the department heads, it's demoralizing to staff for every year, year after year after year, to be faced with knowing that we're looking at a huge deficit. And so, yeah.
I'd like to just follow up a little bit on what Leah said in that. First off, we're into this problem not because it's Rutland or Wachusett. We're in this problem because of the state. For years now, the state has been reducing the amount of money they provide to the school and to the town. not much we can do about that unless we do something about that. So my problem here isn't necessarily with the Wachusett or with Rutland, it's with the state. With that being said, Lee was right in that the state assessment that the town has to give to Wachusett, the state assessment, runs about 4%. 3.87 or something like that, Austin, I believe. So about 4% is our assessment that the state says we're supposed to be responsible for. Then there is the piece that Wachusett adds on, which is averaging 20% a year over the last 4 years. So I don't think Rutland has a problem paying what the state mandated is of the 4%. But in our town, we are slashing people, we are cutting positions, we are eliminating programs so that Wachusett can continually increase at 20% a year without justification. We have no black and white, no numbers, no figures where that 20% comes from. I think that's a problem. We need transparency. So we're being asked to slash this town or increase the taxes on something we have no control over because Wachusett isn't giving us the numbers. Unless, Austin, you've gotten something in lately that I haven't seen in terms of that 20%, what it's made up of.
No, we don't have a final number yet.
Okay, so if that number was 8%, maybe we'd all be agreeable on that, but 20%.
Just to be clear, you're talking about the discretionary
The
assessment.
discretionary piece, the discretionary. This is something that they can say, well, here's what we want, we're gonna do it, and here we're gonna get it to the town, and you have to like it. I have a problem with that. I don't think anybody's income sitting here in the audience tonight has gone up 20% this year, or last year, or the year after that, because I know Social Security hasn't. So what right does Wachusett have to ask all its towns in the district who are facing the same thing to increase that discretionary by 20% a year? I'd like to know where it comes from so that I can make an informed decision as to what the override should be. That's number one. I don't think that's asking too much. Number two is, I have asked the board several times and discussed it with Austin, that I think a slash and burn policy in this town is not good. It's either we're gonna ask for 2.5 from the town people, the citizens, or we're gonna cut everything. I think if we're gonna share, and we can't ask Wachusett to share, which we should, if we've are 2.5 million in deficit, we should ask Wachusett for a third, our town for a third, and the citizens for a third. Let's make it fair, right across the board. So we can't ask for Wachusett. So my feeling is, if we wanna be fair, then maybe we have to cut the town a half, 1.1 million, and we have to raise our taxes by 1.1 million. That might be the fair way to go for an override. I'm not, certainly there's other proposals that I'm not looking at those. But that's what I'd like to see, the administrator come back for our meeting with a joint meeting and see what it looks like if we do a half and half. And I'd like the board to kind of advise the administrator to do that.
So the chair, Austin, remember we discussed a few meetings back about paying, getting an override just for town services? I think that's what you're talking about, right?
Well, everything, but the town
Yeah.
services were like a 500,000. Initially, we had said, if I don't mind, Tom,
Yeah.
we take a budget for the town, we need about 500,000. The school, we need about 1.6 million. And we put those on the town meeting and say, you approve this or approve this one. Let the town see transparency of what it costs for everything. What Wachusett's doing, because our needs, and I think we've come a long way last year in hiring people and putting professionals in. We've come a long way that I'd hate to see the town get rid of what we've gotten just for a $500,000 override.
Can we
think that's
legally do
important.
that?
So you can place as many override questions on the ballot if you want. There's been examples, I think, there was a presentation at MMA, the city
Yeah.
of Medford did several override questions, but it was structured a little bit differently. It was a needs override, this is what we need to operate the town. And the separate question was wants, sort of like a menu selection, if you will. If we had this additional override, we could do X, Y, and Z. So the first question was important to run the town, the second was how do we advance the town in terms of what we think the town wants. So the risk though in the proposal to split it between town and the school is, let's say the town one passes, the school one fails. But the school budget still passes district-wide. Our levy was increased by $500,000, but we're still responsible for the assessment. And what happens is we end up having the cut on the town side because we have the assessment that's still there, right? So there is a risk in that strategy. It's certainly not, certainly legal. We could do something like that. But we'd have to be a little bit more strategic about how we do that. Maybe you make the school budget article contingent on a successful tying it to that respective override vote. We'd have to be creative with that, but again, if the school budget passes district-wide, we're still responsible for that 17.9 million.
And if we don't pay it, what happens then?
We're legally required to pay. I mean, I think that's what I was told previously, and I don't know, was essentially that's the first bill that gets paid, is the school bill. Like if the school budget passes.
Just to give you an idea, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just to give you an idea, I think our first payment is usually, it's like July 1st. The treasurer makes sure we have cash in the bank to pay that assessment, both for Bay Path, Wachusett, and our pension assessment is paid, and liability is paid like the first warrant, July 1. Or right around there. So, and we are members of a district we signed and approved years ago to be a part of, and the Wachusett and Bay Path regional school districts. And the district agreement is what governs our responsibilities as a community. And payment is one of it, unfortunately.
Again, I'm not picking on the school. I want transparency for this town, me personally. I paid my taxes, I paid the school bill, I have no problem with kids being educated, but I think we need to be told the truth, and that needs to be broken down. What does it really cost to run the town, 2.1 million or $500,000? And what does it really cost to run Wachusett, 2.1 million or 1.6 million? That's my concern for the town, that we absolutely help them understand what is going on, because this has been happening year after year. That 20% has been going on, as you showed on a slide last time, for 4 or 5 years now. They just keep 20%. Why wasn't it 12 one year and 18 the next? It was a average of 20%.
Here,
So,
if I may, just
you know,
across the country, the cost of education is ballooning. I'm not trying to justify it, but across the country, the cost of education is ballooning astronomically and exponentially higher than anything else. And that's, we're not, unfortunately, the local communities aren't getting the help from the state or the federal governments to offset those ballooning costs. So I'm not.
Oh, I understand, but I live in Rutland. The taxpayers live in Rutland.
I understand.
I don't care what happens in South Dakota or California, I care about Rutland. And that's where we need more transparency, and again, I'm not faulting the school, I want transparency from the school. I wanna know where the money's being spent that we're giving them, because the state, since going back years ago when the lottery was established, the state said, we're gonna give 100% back to the town. Where we are now is 60% of lottery money. Every year, the state's income has gone up, the lottery winnings have gone up, and the amount they give us, well, I'll be polite and just say it's gone down, okay? But we have to control what we can control, and that is, we need transparency from the school committee, no less, let alone Wachusett. And I don't feel we're getting that.
Oh, there's a ton of waste.
Huh?
A ton of waste. When we were kids in school, there was one teacher in the classroom. Now there's a teacher and 6 aides. And I'm not saying they're not needed,
No,
maybe
it's
they
all-
are, I don't know, but.
And it's all the mandates by
Yeah,
the state, with
right.
no funding. Again, we come back to the state. So I can't control that unless everybody rises up and decides to control it.
Yeah.
But again, I come back to voting for an override is not the issue if you know what the override is for. And you have it in black and white and you know the numbers.
Well, and I've asked the school administration, they have been quite transparent in their meetings and they have a lot of presentations and that they have provided a whole lot of data. And I've asked them to pull out those presentations and that data and make it more easily accessible for all of us because I attend or watch a majority of the school committee meetings, but I realize that I'm in the minority of that. So I've asked to have that information pulled out. I believe the superintendent and business manager are making efforts to attend the senior center. I believe they'll probably be at the budget roundtable that we have with the department heads just to sit and listen to hear Rutland's kind of situation. So it has to be a two-way street. I previously had invited all of our elected school committee members, the 3 Wachusett members as well as the 2 Bay Path members to attend the FinCom Select Board Department Head meeting. I will extend that invitation again now that we have the date finalized. Because to your point, Harry, I think it's important that these are also our elected officials and that they're hearing the town concerns as well. So I don't want that to be lost. They also, on both Bay Path as well as Wachusett, are a minority of the school committee. So they have some say in it, but they are still the minority of the entire governing body. Bay Path is unique the way the state funding formula is for vocational schools. They receive a lot more money per student from our tax dollars per the state for the minimum local contribution, which is part of the reason that they don't ask for any discretionary monies because they're getting a significantly more portion from our tax dollars based on the state funding formula to begin with. If Wachusett had that or any non-vocational school had that same funding formula, we wouldn't be seeing the discretionary piece that we do.
Well, I guess my question is, can we get the numbers for the discretionary piece, what it's made up with, before the finance committee and the select board meet? Will they give it to us?
What the discretionary
How that
assessment will
account,
be?
how that's made up?
Yeah, so it's been in the budget book for years. And I think they're honest in their budget book. It's how they fill their gap. It's as simple as that. If they have a budget gap of, if chapter 70 brings in 80 million, but their budget is 100 million, the 20 million is pretty much what the discretionary is gonna fill.
Okay,
It's been in their budget book. They've called it different things over the years, but I've looked at their budget books that they have online since FY17, and they all say it's a revenue source to fill the remaining budget
But is it
needs.
broken down?
No, 'cause
I've never
that's-
seen it broken down.
That's not how they develop the budget, nor is that how we develop our budget, right? So.
But you go around to all the departments and you ask them, how we doing this, how we doing that, doing this?
Right,
There's
but you
gotta be
don't,
black
but
and
Harry,
white
you don't
somewhere
ask
else.
how much of your department is funded by property taxes.
No, but I would
Over
ask,
receipts.
when you say that's the surplus, I guess I push back and say, is that a need or a want?
But I
So
think,
we don't know that.
I think that there's a difference in methodology too, I think, and I think we're guilty of it too, right? We have our budget increases, but I think in the private sector, if you don't have the revenue to support something, you cut, right?
Right.
Government doesn't work that way, right? We have collective bargaining agreements, we have contractual agreements, and then we figure out how to identify the revenue to fill that need. The schools are definitely a big part of it, especially regional schools, right? Because some of it is formula driven by the state, and then because we're part of a regional school district, we are responsible for the remaining share. But that's just not how they develop their budget, Harry. They
So
don't say.
we're never gonna know.
Well, I think you're gonna have to start earlier than now, in their budget development process to tell them that they have to live within their means.
So it's
But
something
but
for
again,
next
there needs
year.
to be a definition of what their means are, right?
Right,
If you wanna set a
right.
policy about that their discretionary assessment can only increase by X% per year, that's feedback that the school committee should have for future budget planning. We're gonna talk about a draft policy tonight, that I've advanced, that
Okay.
maybe accomplishes that, right? But this is how they've developed their budget for as long as I can see online, maybe longer. And I'm sure that there's been pushback on their discretionary assessment, it's just, I do think that there needs to be more public feedback, if everyone's so fired up about the schools, and I know we all are. I can't be the only one that attends a school committee meeting from Rutland.
And I can't,
And Leah can't either, right? Members of the public as well, right?
Right.
I think the budget roundtable was a public meeting, and Leah and I were the only ones there from the public. I sent this board a list of their school committee meetings, business and finance meetings. Those are publicly posted. People need to attend to let the school committee know what their positions are on how it's affecting Rutland and the other 4 towns in the district. In my private conversations with the superintendent, I've showed him, and I've talked about these numbers. But I also know that he represents the school committee and the students, right? He has his stakeholders as well.
and I will say, if I can piggyback on that a little bit, and this is some of the data that I've asked them to pull together, they're very concerned about the trajectory that Wachusett is on as far as student proficiency overall. And that the students are not coming out of COVID anywhere near where they were, that even before COVID, they weren't near kind of where the perception was. They have data for that, and they have data for the number of their staffing ratios and their administration ratios, and they have all of that data, and that's stuff that I've asked them to pull out to show, to your point a little bit, the transparency piece, that the district is or isn't in the top percent of staffing or top percent of administrative positions or whatever, and so they're working on that. I don't think that site is live yet, Austin, but I will talk to them next week at the meeting to ask them to work to get that live with the information, again, so that we can have educated board and committee members as well as taxpayers,
Again, I'm
and
not.
see that data.
I'm not, I want transparency, I'm not criticizing, I want transparency. And Jen, I wanna thank you for sending some information to me on the schools. And I looked it up, and I saw that Wachusett ranks at a 57% rate for student accomplishment. 57%. And we're being asked for around the $1.6 million for 50% rate, 57? Seriously, what is going on here? I don't mind paying, but if we're gonna pay that kind of money, I wanna see better going on at the school. So, again, it's not at the school, it's the system that we're in. And my whole process here is to say, if we have to do something that Wachusett can't help us, the state can't help us, then we should split it between the town and the workforce. Why put all of it on the workforce and why put all of it on the town? That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah,
I don't necessarily disagree with that option, Harry. Where my concern with that is like Austin said, if 4 out of the 5 towns approve the school budget, we're still on the hook for it, and we have to pay all of the town assessment, and still all the cuts go to the town, so there is no. Even if we pass an override for $1 million, if that school budget passes, that $1 million override goes to pay for the school, not for any of the town
But that's what I'm saying,
services.
Jen. If we have $2.2 million, 1.1 million comes out of the town, 1.1 million comes from so that we've saved $1 million here, we got $1 million here, and we're able to take care of everything and take care of that $2.2 million override. That's what I'm saying, split the difference. Now, that's just my opinion. I've talked to so many people in town, and they just don't have an appetite for passing $2.5 million this year. Cause next year we're gonna face the same thing. So how do we make it easy on both sides? And it's not gonna be easy. The state has put us in a terrible position where we're going at each other, and I think it's horrible, personally.
I agree with you 100%, Harry, on that piece for sure. I guess my concern with doing a million and a million in cuts and a million in override is that we're still gonna be in this position next year, and we're gonna be looking at another whatever in cuts and whatever in an override. And I think that we do ourselves, a town, a disservice to constantly be doing the cuts. A couple years ago, that override got us back to staffing levels of where we should be as a community, of this size and demographics. And so to start having any cuts at the staffing level and even in the services level is going to cost us money. Unemployment, if we lose ambulance revenue, if we there's, it's not a zero-sum game. We don't just make cuts and save a whole bunch of money. There's a cost to that. I believe it's unemployment is not a easy piece for that. I know Seth has talked about, Chief Knight has talked about, the decrease in ambulance revenues if there's staffing cuts on the fire department side. All the departments, I mean, Harold was just in here talking about the loss of revenue to the town if we face these cuts. So it's not just a savings on the dollar side, but there's a loss on the other side also. And I hear that there's no appetite for an override. I don't think any of us are favoring that. But I think also we're not doing ourselves any favor by not honestly advocating for one, to be honest. And I would say we have information from Austin that we know kind of roughly a $2.5 million override without cuts would get us a year, maybe a little bit more. $5 million override, I think with this new school projection numbers is about 3-ish years, and again, this is still projections, but Austin has a much better handle on the CBA formulas as well as the school funding formulas than previous projections have taken into account. And I believe the $7 million was about a 4 to 5 year timeframe. Ideally, we don't know for sure again. And so I think we hear again and again that every year we're asking for more money, more money, more money. We have an opportunity now with administration in town as well as the schools to have a longer term, thoughtful, hopeful projection that's more honest, and how that looks without constantly having our poor staff every year being they must dread December and January timeframe on, because it's constantly are my hours gonna be cut? Am I gonna have a position? Are my hours gonna be cut? Is my salary gonna be cut? Am I gonna get a COLA? I mean, I think all of us are working and getting even a small increase, even if it's a 0.5% or a 1% increase. And we're telling our staff that, sorry, you're getting a decrease in fewer hours and
All people care about is what's coming out of their paycheck. So you gotta break it down and tell them how much extra it's gonna be, like we did the last time.
Yeah.
It's gonna increase it's gonna be an extra however many $100 and if.
7 million, you're talking about $2,000 this year alone, period.
Yeah.
On top of your regular taxes. I don't know anybody that wants that, so.
No, I don't either.
This funny money that we're playing with here, the 5 million, the 7 million, that's because we don't know, nobody's a mystic. I know Austin can't see the future, he can try to plan for it, but he can't see it. So, the town didn't trust us the last time, and I'm just saying with the town, with 2.5, with that override we did the last long, and now we're gonna ask for 5 or 7 so that people in town are feeling good and comfortable about having a job. I've got 10,000 citizens in this town I gotta answer to about their taxes. And it's not easy. Do I really wanna suggest we cut town services? Absolutely not. Do I wanna suggest we pound away on our citizens for more taxes? Absolutely not. I'm trying to find a middle of the road here. That's what I'm trying to find, to make it palatable for both, to get us by. Cause Austin has a lot of great ideas coming up next year of how we can work with the school, how we can do things in town. And I think we need to buy them that time to get stuff in without loading a lot of tax money on our citizens. So, that's the only reason I asked for a 50-50 deal on looking at the budget.
Having watched a few of these meetings on the Wachusett channel and trying to really understand and fathom where they are, where Austin is, and where the town is something that really is going to require a lot more effort than what we've got to, what we've seen so far. So in other words, if the Wachusett School Committee is going to give us anything that's a reasonable percentage of what we have to give, well, okay, then, we have a ways to go, but, it's just one of these things from watching these meetings that I really come away from watching these meetings and feel like, wow, okay, yes, and we see, people coming up to speak their minds at the open sessions in the meetings, and the just not getting, let's put it simply, I think it comes down to getting any satisfaction out of what's being said to us.
So we looking for a decision, override or no override tonight?
I mean, I think ideally Austin's hoping for more guidance as far as an override or not, and how that override looks. I think we still need some conversation and hopefully to get solid numbers from the school districts. I think, Austin, you had recent communication from Bay Path that those numbers seem to be pretty solid. Is that?
Yes, that's their assessment.
And so just to reiterate that's a $40,000 increase on your projections, which were already a high increase. That includes, and I think that some of this speaks to kind of asking Bay Path school committee members also for some feedback. I think there's an increase in transportation. We obviously have more students attending. And I think debt services increased a little bit also. So those pieces as well. But, we obviously have asked Wachusett will be around, we'll consider that. But as far as kind of where the board is thinking, I guess kind of, we've heard Harry very much is kind of more in favor of the 1 million in cuts and I'm rounding 1 million in cuts and 1 million kind of override. I don't know.
I'm not in favor of anything. I wanna see what it looks like.
Right.
I wanna see what the possibility is to bring to the town if that's what we have to do. So I'm not in favor of any of these.
I guess I wanna just
so-
apologize, I didn't wanna put words in your mouth, but
Okay.
that was one of your kind of options.
Right.
So I think, Austin, I don't know if, you can speak to that just off the cuff, I don't wanna put you on the spot. If we had asked for a $2 million cut, I think we would essentially look at what half of that would look like, so it's still a pretty significant reduction in staff, I would imagine, but I don't know for sure. Paul, Tom, Jen,
I understand where Harry's coming from, trying to split it 50-50, but as Austin's shown us and it's projected, we're gonna be double that the following year. So where are we gonna come up with 3 million, the next year? So I don't think I'm in favor of, we're not in a position, it would be jamming something through too fast to ask for some sort of significant $5, $7, $9 million override. I don't think we are prepared to ask for that. We have no plan. I am not opposed to attempting to seek out the override for what we need for the operating budget. I go back to the fact that 75% of that override is for the school. And I think the school committee, as our elected representatives, need to be the ones at town meeting, at these budget meetings, advocating for that override for the school that the budget they're recommending. It should not be left up to this select board to ask for $1.6 million from the residents when we have absolutely no control or say over what that budget is. So, that's, and I have said this to Austin, I'll say it again here, I feel like we are held hostage at the mercy of the schools. Because if, like I said, if that 4 out of 5 towns vote for it, we have to pay for it, and the cuts get made at the town level. So it's worth a shot for me. I don't wanna cut services. The worst that can happen is what we've seen historically is it doesn't get voted down and we have to prepare a cut budget. But again, I think we need to stress that those school committee members, as our elected representatives representing our school, this is your budget. You convince the townspeople to pass it.
Well, and that's kind of what we talked about at the last time that FinCom had invited the school committee too. I basically said, like, this isn't an us and you, it's an all of us together, and we really need you to take a big initiative on this, right? Because we can't do it ourselves, and we shouldn't have to do it ourselves, to your point, when
They cut nothing, we cut everything.
And that's my big gripe, Tom, is we're sitting here discussing cuts to services, and their budget presentation includes plans for adding more staff and adding more programs. And again, I'm not saying that they don't need it, but why is it the school that constantly is the one getting to add that staff and add those services at the expense of the town staff and the town services? There needs to be,
They need to explain the difference between their
Yes.
need and their want.
yes, we have needs too, but literal needs that we are cutting
Yeah.
Right.
to get to their either their needs or their wants and their priorities.
Losing police
It's-
officers, people could die. Losing firefighters, people could die.
Ambulance service, yes.
You know,
it's-
not adding a couple extra teachers maybe will be tough on the school, but nobody's gonna die.
And not even just public safety, you know, if we're talking about, you know, in some of the memos, we're talking about, like Harold just said, we won't be able to get permits. We're gonna lose out on new growth revenue. We're not gonna be able to collect revenue from delinquent account. Like, we're losing revenue if we have to cut staff. So we're doing ourselves a disservice just not being able to get revenue that we need. So I think we need to find a balance. So I guess I'm not opposed to giving it our best shot, you know? I'll support it for the town side, but we need
the school
the participation of the school committee.
I agree, yeah.
I don't disagree at all that no matter what we look at, whether it's, you know, a $2 million in cuts or $1 million in cuts and $1 million in override or a $2.2 million override or whatever, that we have to have more support than what we have. And I think administration wise, I think the school has been much more open and vocal as to what they foresee their future looking like. And they have some more data that they can feel confident in providing that, which they didn't have that data before because they were still closing out previous administration stuff. But I hear that, you know, a 1 to 2 year override is probably more feasible than the longer term. I also wanna be clear that this is going to be an ongoing conversation, and it's not, you know, it's not going to be a long-term solve.
Yep.
And we can continue to do advocacy at the state. You know, I had asked Wachusett to maybe invite the state legislature out to kind of tour Wachusett and see what the largest regional district in the state looks like, because there's such a disconnect at the state level.
But I agree with Harry 100%. The public schools are worse now. They're not better, they're worse. So where is the money going?
Yeah, how can we keep increasing 20% and our students still rate at 50%?
So
57, how?
You're running out of time, Harry, so what do we need from this board tonight?
So, I mean,
I'm asking that the board give Austin direction to do a split 50-50 between the town and that. Because if we can see it at the if that can be available for the finance meeting, we'll meet with them, then that gives us more information to look at. It may be nothing, it may not work there, but I'd like to see what the possibility is, that's all. If you don't think that's doable, then let us know.
So still a reduced budget and then an override based off of that, is that what the proposal?
Yeah, reduce it by half and then an override budget based on that. I wanna see what that means for the town. I mean, are we really gonna get rid of firefighters? Or do we have a lot of supplies and all this other stuff out there that we can cut? So maybe it's not 50, maybe it's 60-40, but I'm trying to make it
Talking about
palatable. I want
priority.
this thing to pass. I wanna make sure we're okay this year, that's all. And
So you're
that's what,
talking like a priority list.
yeah, that's what I'm asking for. So if it doesn't work, then we go to 2.5, but I wanna see what it's like.
Alright, so I mean, what I'm trying to avoid is developing 42 different budgets. I think give me and staff a number, like you did with the 2.1, and we'll get to it. Remember, there's also some other options as well, right? We have just about $1 million in free cash if you know, desperately, if we need to use that as a revenue source for the budget, we can do that. We have, I'm gonna round down, it's just about 1.2 million in stabilization fund, our quote unquote rainy day fund. That's also an option as a revenue source for the town, for balancing the budget. If, I heard the comment that we don't have a plan, if we need time to develop a plan, you know, do you use those one-time funds to balance the budget, to save staff as well? Those are options that the board can also provide some direction on. But I think what also decreases morale is going back, as I mentioned, like 42 different times with different budgets.
Well, we've
We've already done the worst, right? 2.1
We've already
million.
done the 2.5, we've done the 5, we've done the 7. I'm asking for one more. That's all I'm asking for, is that 50-50.
Yeah.
That's it. I don't want 43, 50, I don't either.
Well, what I fear though is that, because the board still hasn't really had an opportunity to discuss and review the budget, and also I think I've heard some feedback in individual discussions, there may be disagreement among the board about what those respective cuts are, right? So there may be also another budget after that, right? You folks haven't, I think I've again heard individual feedback from each of you, but let's say for example you disagree with cutting so much of Public Works and you wanna take from our offices and assign it to Public Works. You haven't even had that discussion yet, right?
Right.
You've had the 2.1 million in reductions for a couple of weeks now. And I think again, I've heard from some feedback from each of you, but it's not impossible, Harry. I just wanna be mindful that, you know, it's mid-February. We haven't even had a discussion about the town meeting date, strategically, budget forums, things like that. I'll do what I'm told, well, I'll do what I'm told, but I just wanna raise those concerns on behalf of staff. That we've gotta come to a decision, and I'm just gonna put it out there. Even the level services budget from the school district is only $300,000 less than what they're asking for, and it's still an 8% increase on the town side, right? That's their level services. So even the I think the comments about between wants and needs, let's say their needs are level services, it's still only about 1% or 2% difference between the wants and the needs.
Yeah, so that's
$300,000
where
right
you
for us.
and I kinda look at it differently. I start here and I increase 20%. Next year I increase 20%. The year after that I increase 20%. And now the difference between my wants and needs have gone up 80%. Not down here.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I still question where the money
Well,
goes.
And Harry, right, so I think we can look at that individual assessment figure, and I think that's, first of all, the average has actually been 13%, just about 14%, not 20. On the discretionary.
Well, okay, that's not what your number showed up here. When you put that up there, it was about 20% a year for the 4 years, I think.
No, it hasn't.
That's,
No,
Yep.
we can look.
Okay.
But I have the spreadsheet in front of me. It's, the compound annual growth rate has been 13% since FY17. You were correct, 3.87 for the minimum local contribution. That's correct. their average percent increase on their budget, Leah, correct me if I'm wrong, you've been here, on their overall district budget has been, what, 4 to 5%? But again, it's the reflection on what the assessments are. Some of that has been change in minimum local, some of that has been change in population, shifting between the towns.
And I was gonna say, the population piece is really a challenge, because even if Rutland has a decrease in students, but our decrease is still larger, our percent of students is still larger than the other communities, then we have a larger share. And so the regional formula is not easy by any means, so.
I guess I just want some, what do you wanna do? If we wanna go split half, I'd almost want you to make a vote that that's what you're gonna do and move forward with an override. Because at this point, you're gonna have 5 different options, and I have a feeling we're still gonna be here next meeting, and maybe you're gonna ask me for one more budget to come back. So,
If we are, we don't deserve to sit here, I'll tell you that. We should not be asking you for any more.
but to be clear, we've also been talking about a $2 million deficit for months now, right? So, I appreciate that this is a tough decision, but I made a comment that I think the staff and the community are looking for some leadership from their leaders on this. So if that's what you wanna do, if you wanna cut in half and go for the remaining as an override, we'll do it, right? I think that's better news for staff that they don't have to cut as much, but I think that we're gonna have to get moving here.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that the board consider having Austin split the budget between the town and the taxpayers, and I'd like to move the motion.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any conversation? I will just say, I think, and I said it before, I think that that's not, I understand the perspective of that. I don't necessarily think that that's fair to our townspeople, because it's still going to result in a reduction in services, and next year, we're still going to be in the same or worse situation than we are. But that's my personal perspective, and I appreciate the difficult position that we're in, so I don't, that's.
Well, the motion's been moved, so I'd like to get a vote on it if we can.
We can have discussion while there's a motion and a second.
I know
We can
that,
have additional
I know,
discussion.
we've had a ton of discussion on
I'm
that.
sorry,
so.
is it a motion for Austin just to move forward with that as the,
As one of the options.
okay, not as an official?
So that's not the plan?
No, he's gonna.
So what's your plan, respectfully to the board?
To create a budget, one more budget that cuts down by 1/2 and raises the taxes by 1/2.
But will that be the budget you support?
I don't know, that's an option, Austin.
Yeah.
I'm not even supporting the 3 million or the 2.5 yet, cause I don't know
Yeah.
the particulars. That's an option I want brought to the board and the finance committee, that's all I'm saying.
May I just ask a question for clarification, because I think I'm confused. If we do 50-50, we do 1 million in cuts and 1 million in overrides. If the override passes for the 1 million, does that not mean that all of that would go to the schools, and then we'd still have to cover a portion of
We'd
it
have
from
to
the
cut whatever
services?
million from town.
I think if the
Service
school budget
stuff.
passes, then yes, then
Then
that's-
essentially the override was just for the school, and then we would still have
A million
a
in
million
cuts for
plus in
town.
cuts from town.
Yes.
Okay.
Versus 2.5 million cuts from the town.
If it
It
doesn't
would
pass.
lessen the
if
amount
override
that we would
doesn't
cut,
With
but
the
it's
override
not.
fails.
pass.
and the school passes.
So
Well, the school's gotta pass.
I'm looking at just an
School's gonna
alternative.
pass.
Right, I'm looking at alternatives, which is gonna pass, 2.5 or 1.1? Knowing that we've done everything we can to help the town on both sides as much as we could. That's all. It's not a guarantee, it's an option, is what I'm looking at. But I'd like to go on with it because we got people here in the audience who wanna get moved, they got things to do, and I don't wanna keep talking about the budget. I think we've.
So there's your numbers. Adding $1 million back to the town budget, our overall net position is just over $1 million in a deficit. I think it's important for everyone to see the outer years, what our future deficits are. This is still assuming the same growth rate on the town side, so about a 4.5% growth rate on the town side and 10% respectively for our educational assessments. So you see 27, 3.1, 28, 4.8, 6.8 and 9.1 for the FY30. So just want to put that out there for us to be aware of.
So we have a motion for Austin and staff to prepare a $1 million cut budget instead of the 2.2 million that had already been presented, with a second. Roll call, Harry.
Second, aye.
That's all right.
Ledger nay.
Galvin, I.
Whitman, nay. So if you can work on that, please, Austin.
And so
Are you going to ask for guidance as far as if it's a similar kind of?
So what do you wanna present next, what do you wanna present on the 6th? Are we presenting, it sounds like actually we're just gonna present the cut budget of $1 million, that's gonna be our override budget now. So completely scrap everything that's been prepared for our normal budget, right, cause we're not going for 2.5, we're not going for anything more, right, we're still reducing. That's gonna be the budget we present on March 6th, right?
I have no idea what you're asking, because I'm looking for an alternative option. I'm not saying that's what we're gonna do, but the finance committee and the board have to arrive at a budget. We have to discuss this. Which one will we arrive at?
So
I don't
are we
know.
presenting 3 budgets on March 6th?
I know to me, we're presenting 2. 2.5 override and the 50-50. Those are the 2. You can present a 5 and a 7, I don't think that's gonna fly for the town.
No, hold on. So remember, you have 2 budgets right now. You have a $2.5 million override budget, and you have a cut budget of
2.5.
2.1 million.
Right.
So now there's a third.
Yes.
With a cut of $1 million, with about $1 million override budget. Are we presenting all 3 and what they look like on March 6th?
Yes.
I'd say yes.
Alright, so we need more time. March 6th is we definitely need more than just one night,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
More time,
We
more
can send out-
time for department head, for that joint
departments to
meeting.
discuss that with each of you in the finance committee. Because even 2 budgets, it's gonna be a lot, for March 6th. So if everyone can just, and Tamika, we can send out something to see what your availability is. Hopefully it's maybe March 5th or 8th or something right around that same time frame. Cause there's a lot for you to consider. And also, I do think that there needs to be a lot of time for the board to be able to discuss that after the fact and make your ultimate decision what you wanna do.
I know it's frustrating, I mean, but I think we owe it to the town to give them as much as possible.
Yeah.
So that God forbid, worst case, you know, we can tell them, listen, we tried, you know, we looked at this. I mean, at the end of the day, the town is the one that's gonna say yay or nay, so it's got nothing.
Confuse them.
What's that?
I just worry about confusing them with too much information.
And I guess
Yeah,
I
I mean, that's always a risk.
I appreciate, Austin, you and staff working on this. I think I'm frustrated that this wasn't brought up before when we asked for the $2.2 million cut, that, you know, it was big, we need to see that, and not a lesser cut, so.
I just think it's gonna be a very hard sell, so we have to do everything we can to try and show that we tried our best not to raise taxes. I think we owe it to them. I mean, everything's going up, so it's gonna be a tough sell.
Okay.
Thank you, board. I do have to leave. I apologize to the people that are here for the meetings for me not be here, but I do have a personal issue I have to take care of, so.
Thank you. Good night, Harry. Thank you. Moving in, are we okay to open the joint meeting with the historical commission?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry to keep you waiting. I appreciate your patience. I apologize.
Before Peter starts, I'm gonna step down from my select board role.
So for this conversation, we'll be a 3-member board, just for Nico. Did you open your meeting? I wanna make sure you.
Yes, we opened our meeting at 5
with us.
Well, after 5:30.
Is everybody here with you that's the same group? Or?
We are missing Michelle Van Riet on the commission at the moment, I
I
believe
think there's some
that's-
commission and
yeah.
some society members,
We
is that?
have several members from the Historical Society who have joined us, and I want to thank everybody for being here and for staying with us and for your support for this. So, Madam Chair, as I'm sure everybody knows, we met last summer to discuss the applying to place the Wood House and Studio on the State Register of Historic Places. That would go through the Mass Historical Commission, and they would recommend for the National Register. We had that discussion back in the summer. We've gone back as a commission, and we've gone over some of those questions that were raised, and we've prepared a presentation that we hope will answer those questions. We have some visuals here from Franklin T. Wood, some etches, artwork here on the table that the Historical Society brought in. If anybody wants to take a look. We have a quorum of commission members, and we hope to gain your support and permission to continue with our joint application with the Historical Society to place the Wood House and Studio at the very least on the State Register and hopefully the National Register as well. And without any further ado, we'll have Jen give our presentation.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for listening, and as Peter introduced, our goal here is really to get the blessing of the board to put the Wood House and the Wood Studio, pursue the process of getting those properties on the national and state registers. The presentation that we've prepared here is really just to kind of give you some information, some background on Franklin T. Wood, a little bit about the properties, but mostly just about the impact that they have on the community and how they're utilized. I'll try and keep it as brief as possible. You've got everything in your packets. So just some info about Franklin T. Wood. He was born in Hyde Park, 1877. He was educated in Boston and New York and spent a lot of time over in Europe. He's mostly known for illustrations, etchings, and landscapes. Again, as Peter noted, there's several specimens here, either his etchings or artworks that he's done for any of his publications, which are noted here. That he worked as an illustrator for the Youth's Companion, Boston Home Journal, Frank Leslie's American Illustration. His works are displayed in numerous museums, including the Smithsonian American Art Museum. He moved to Rutland in 1915. It's as we've learned through some of his articles and some of the information, he moved out here for his health, as so many people did. You know, we have all the, tuberculosis hospital, everybody came out here because of the fresh air to help with their health concerns, so that's where he chose Rutland. And he lived here until he died in 1945, and he's buried over in the Rutland Rural Cemetery. This is a quote that I found that was attributed to Franklin T. Wood, where he said this about Rutland. It seems one is closer to the infinite. The boundaries are the wide sky and the rolling hills. The yesterdays and tomorrows are of small moment. The vague fears and worries of life lose shape in this restful beauty spot of nature. So I just thought that was just a good thing to have out there, that he's describing the community that we live in, which I think most of us, if not all of us in this room, feel the same way that he did about it back then. So just to give a little bit of background on the Wood House and the Studio, their impact on the community, how we see it, the history of the Wood House, it was built in 1908. Obviously, it was the residence of Franklin T. Wood. His studio was built later, I believe we found out in 1938. Where he completed many works. And of course, as I mentioned, he died here in 1945 and is buried in the cemetery, the Rural Cemetery. As far as education and engagement, the Historical Society, many members that we have here, has utilized the Wood House since 1975, since it was gifted to the town. And they have been there in that entire time. They provide educational experiences across the board. Every year, many different ones. Some we see repeats of. We see the spirits walk at the burial ground around Halloween time. There's a couple of different ones we've seen, antique appraisal program. There was one, a mother-daughter bridal display. They did a great one on the unsung heroines of World War II. And of course, you know, there's the annual lemonade social and open houses that they have, and of course, the Festival of Trees that they help put on. So it's a place that just houses a lot of community involvement. And then, of course, it's used as a museum, so we have hundreds, thousands of documents and artifacts from our history that are housed over there. It's my understanding that there's quite a few, I mean, obviously, there's multi-generational families in town, and there's quite a few that reach out to the Historical Society and come up to research their own family genealogies and history with the artifacts that are housed there in the museum. And don't forget the, scholarship. They have a scholarship program for Rutland High School seniors as well. One of the questions that the select board previously had was, what does our master plan say about historic properties? So I did pull out some information from the draft master plan. There's a couple of goals. Again, one of the quotes in here, Rutland's a town with numerous historical assets and a strong agricultural identity characteristic of rural New England. The protection and management of historic and cultural resources is key to maintaining what many residents love about Rutland. And just going through some of the goals that are in our historic preservation piece of our master plan. Number one, preserve the town's historic character and cultural resources. It's right here in our master plan that we should be seeking out opportunities to get properties on the national and historic places to preserve them and to acknowledge their importance to our community. Goal 2, again, providing public education is essential to long-term cultural and historic resource protection. Our historical society provides unending educational opportunities. Again, not all of them specific to Rutland, but it's part of our community outreach. It's what brings a lot of our community together, is the programs that they provide in the education. Goal 3, increase familiarity and awareness with the town's historic and cultural resources. So this is, putting something like the Woodhouse and the studio on the historic register kind of helps with this. It's going to allow us to get information out there about who Franklin T. Wood was, what he was to Rutland, and vice versa. And we just need to gain support for these preservation initiatives, as it notes here. And just engage with our residents on our history and its importance and what it brings to our community. And then 4, balancing growth with the preservation of historic and cultural resources. So as everybody is aware, obviously, growth is a big deal in this town. It's constantly, our population is increasing. There's all kinds of new development. We need to balance that with preserving our past and what's important to this town. And I think it's, based on the society here, the feedback that we have in the community, the attendance at all of the educational opportunities, initiatives that the Historical Society provides. It's important for this town. It's a piece of who we are, and we need to support maintaining those properties for the residents, as well as for our community and what it provides. And just for your benefit, just some benefits of getting on the National Register. The big one is it's gonna give us more access to grants. So we have that designation. It's gonna open up a lot more eligibility to get grant money for things like preservation, any maintenance of maintenance of the properties, preservation of artifacts and whatnot. It's gonna open a big door if we have that designation. Tourism and education benefits, there's multiple places where if it's on the register, we get put on all of these tourism and educational sites, so people reference. They go around the country looking for places like this, and it will show up as a point of interest, and it will bring in some of that tourism as people are looking to learn more about this topic. And then similar federal preservation funds, so in addition to grants, we would have opportunities for federal funds as well that could be utilized for different things for the properties. So that's my quick and short spiel. If anybody has any questions, myself or anybody here, I'm sure we have plenty that can jump in. But we are hoping for your support and blessing to continue to work with, as the commission, to continue to work with the Historical Society to get the Wood House and the Wood Studio on the National and State Register.
If, I have a couple questions, I think, I don't know what it would take, but because the board had already authorized and provided a letter of support for the house, and I know that there was, at that time, that's when it kind of came out that there was no current lease or grant agreement. And since then, we've entered into a 3-year grant agreement, I believe, with the society, for the house because anything longer was going to have to go to town meeting and what that would look like and what kind of the plans were from the society, financially as well as upkeep of the building and where that designation would fall as far as the responsibility on the town and everything. There were some questions. So I think that was the rationale for the 3-year versus a longer term. So I guess one of my questions is how that, because this house was already kind of approved to go forward, we had provided, the previous board, which was all of us, provided that letter of support for that. I realize also that the house and the studio are on 2 separate parcels, and the studio is town managed still. One of my questions for the studio, and you might not know this, and I'm sorry for not providing information or asking this question ahead of tonight's meeting. When there was a significant renovation work, I believe Addison's letter referenced, I forget when it was, in the late 90s or early 2000s maybe, the configuration of the wood studio changed significantly through that renovation, and I'm not sure how that impacts because it's no longer essentially what it was in 1938 or whatever. It had changed, I believe it had changed fairly significantly as far as the entrance and some windows and everything. So I don't know how that impacts its ability to be placed just because there was a significant amount of renovation work that was done to it. And so I guess, do you need an additional letter of support for the wood studio to go on?
Yes.
That's, yes, that's from, and Scott and Ann, correct us if we're wrong, but it was our understanding that upon submitting the application for the Wood House, the studio came into play, and because they are related to one another, they are requesting that both be pursued together as one entry, if you will. So that's we have the letter for the Wood House, but yes, we would be looking for the additional support for the Wood Studio to be placed, permission to pursue the Wood Studio with the Wood House.
And as far as you might not know this answer, but with the renovation work that had been done, it should still be, it sounds like if they were asking for a letter of support for that, then the state registry, I believe it was the state registry, is okay with it going on and wants it on. But I don't know, I just want that clarification, I guess.
We can certainly follow up on it. I don't know if there would be any limitations, or we may not even know if it would get approved or denied until that, due to the renovations, if there were significant changes, if that's something that they would choose not to do it because of that reason. I don't know if we would know that until we go through that process, but we can try and.
Yeah, no, that's.
Yeah, I know when this discussion first came up, when I first came on the board, it was just the house. No one even mentioned the studio. I personally think it would be irresponsible to include the studio right now after we just agreed to do a study that could include that land. Probably not, but it could. I've worked for the state for just shy of 30 years. I know once you designate something historical, that's it, it's forever. There are literally cities built around buildings because they're you can't move. So I'm not saying I'm against it. To me, I'm less, I get less emotional about the building. This is Rutland's history. That's the way I look at it, what's in the building. And I would say, I think I really think the town should decide this as a whole. But I think the wood studio was not in the original conversation. I feel that being added on, what we just agreed to tonight would be bad. Cause it's final. once you do it, it's fine. There's nothing the town can do with it. So I don't know how that benefits Rutland. Because there's no historical artifacts in the studio, right? It's an office space with a plasma TV on the wall. Right?
We do have some art, I think we do have a little bit of artwork in there, if I remember. I don't know if it's original, but I believe we do.
But I mean,
have some
nothing you couldn't
originals.
fit in the house or another structure. I mean, it's really, I have less problem with the house now. Again, I'm not a big fan of it anyways. I appreciate all you guys and what you do, and history's important. I was always thinking maybe incorporate it in another structure, like the new structure we're looking into with the new senior center, if we ever get something like that, but whatever, if that, you know, if the town wants this to be historical, that's fine. I think I have a problem with the back building though, that, like I said, is being used right now as an office space, not a historical building.
It's not office, it's meeting.
What's that?
It's not office, it's a meeting space.
Well, meeting space, I'm sorry, meeting space, but
I think the big issue at hand here is that when we sent the original, or I should say when the Historical Society sent the original application in, and actually I shouldn't even say it was the original one, this has been an issue since 1970s.
Right.
We've been at this. But the last iteration of it, the Mass Historical Commission, who was responsible for the state register, came back and said, they were the ones who said we need to have the studio included with the house. So this was not anybody's decision at the town level. This was Mass Historical. So it's an all or nothing, basically, with them.
Yeah, and we wanna make the distinction also that it's, there's a lot that needs to be preserved and renovated, if you will, with regards to the properties. They're in
Yes.
very sad shape.
and we don't have any money, by the way.
But that's why we're looking for this, is to
Will
help
be.
get out those grants for that. And we also want to make sure that there's the distinction of, yes, we have a lot of the artifacts and the paintings and the drawings themselves, which is part of it, but it's also the recognition of the importance of the structures themselves. I mean, you could say that about any history. Rufus, he just lived there, like George Washington didn't sleep there, but it's a matter of, it was the home of a notable artist of importance to the Rutland community. He lived here. It's the acknowledgement of that individual, their work, their life, as well as the current
Yeah, I don't have,
utilization
Jen, I
of the
don't have a
space.
problem with the house. It's
So,
it's the shed
the
that's now been
studio-
added on. And again, that shed, I would just like to wait until we get this study done. Again, it's probably not gonna affect any of it. But I don't wanna, this is just me personally, I may get outvoted, but I think like doing this now could change a lot of things down the road. And I don't understand how that benefits the town overall, because most people don't even know that shed is there.
Well, and that's part of the problem. So with respect, the whole point of this is so that we preserve it and we can educate on it and utilize it, and it doesn't get torn down for a field space.
That makes money.
It's a small enough space that, and I'm sorry, I need to point out that this is an initiative that the preservation of the history is important to the community, just as much as having a recreation space is for other parts of the community. So I don't think,
But the building
we
itself.
tear it down, it's gone, or we
Right.
utilize it for something else. So the whole point of this is to preserve it and be able to utilize it and educate on it and have it be part of the community, just as a recreational space would.
Excuse me, but first of all, it's not a shed, it's a studio.
Studio.
And
I thought it was a
if this
meeting
went back,
house.
if this was part of a letter that started in the 70s to have this put on, as a lifetime resident of Rutland, if you talked about the wood house, the studio was all automatically included in it.
Oh, sure.
That was part of you wouldn't even have thought to add and the studio and the building in the back. So it was like an oversight. There have been people that are willing to, a person anyway, willing to donate a significant amount of money. But because it's not protected, which it would be if it was put on a national register, she's hesitant about donating to something that
She may lose,
we
yeah.
could rehab it, do whatever, and all of a sudden the town says, no more lease, we're tearing it down, we're putting a parking lot there. So, and if I know I would be upset if I had donated a significant amount of money.
Sure,
And that
absolutely.
happened. But the studio, in order to make it eligible for it, first of all, the town would have to include it in our lease, which I can't imagine would be a problem. But all we need to do is move some of his paintings out and make it a studio again.
Again, I'm not against it, I'm just, right now, with that plan, I think it could affect it.
And the other thing is the eligibility for grants and that kind of thing. Hopefully, it could be self-sustaining.
Hopefully, yep.
Well, you know, hopefully the budget will pass so that,
Hopefully,
yeah, so, but I think there's at least there's an even chance that the grants and stuff could be.
Yeah, I agree with you. Listen, I respect everything all of you do. History's important. I'm not against it. I'm just saying, you know what, I know structures that have been designated historical, and it can be a problem.
Couple more things. One, the Wood House in Rutland, and I've said this to probably almost everybody in this room. The Wood House in Rutland is equivalent to Rutland is equivalent to the Smithsonian is to the country. All of our history is there. In fact, some of the things that we're getting in that are classified historical are things that I remember and I used and and it's kind of disheartening to and it's hard to accumulate stuff that is in that history, because I think of all the stuff in there as old stuff. But it's just so worth it, and I cannot in my wildest dreams conceive that anybody or anything is going to overtake the land that building is on. It's part of the absolute recreational area of the town of Rutland, and they're not gonna take that over for anything else. It's gonna stay recreational. That building will not be touched. I'm confident of that. And that's it.
Okay.
Elizabeth Hussey, 97 Turkey Hill Road. I'm not really familiar with how these parcels are laid out or that you mentioned. The town owns both areas, correct?
It's two separate parcels, right?
Is it like out of the question to change the way the parcels are so that the studio, which is so close to the house, could be all be on the same parcel?
Unfortunately, it's above my pay grade. I don't know how that's done, but
So I know we had the parcels question, it was one of my questions I jotted down. I know we had the parcels question previously, but more so how far down the hill the wood studio parcel goes, not if they could be, I don't know the history between them being separated out, if they were separated out from when they were built, or afterwards. So that's one of my questions. Austin, while you're pulling that up, I guess, another one of my questions is, in order to do this, does that mean that it needs to be, that the wood studio then needs to be included in the grant agreement to the Historical Society? Because I think that there's conversation about that then that would need to happen, or can it maintain kind of as it is with the town, and just the town also, the board town supports that moving forward also. I'm seeing that go ahead.
The Historical Society does not want to take over the wood studio.
Okay.
Can remain, it is strictly for the
package
title,
essentially.
the honor, just the building, not the land, just the building. So it would be called the Wood Studio with a plaque on it, but that's it. We don't wanna, the town can change it, the town can add to it, the town can tear it down. The town can do whatever, having this distinction. It truly doesn't protect it all the way, but it does give it distinction. So, but we don't want it.
Well, and I guess thank you for that, because that was one of my questions, if it needed to be incorporated into the grant agreement with the house, that then I think that that's a bigger conversation, but I think if it can essentially stay as it is and have a letter of, the parcel management can stay the way it is, if you will, and have a letter of support for the studio, then I think that that's
Somebody help me, what am I looking at now? Obviously, I know.
so 13 is where
Is the
So
studio.
here's the wood house, here's the wood studio, Tom.
So the wood studio is on a bigger plot of land. A much bigger plot of land, and it's in that far
There's-
corner?
There's no,
And it goes all the way down by the basketball courts?
but there's no restriction on what you can do with that property just because it's on the
I'm
National
sorry,
Register.
Jen, once it's historical.
There's no you can tear it down if it's on the National Register. There's no restrictions with what the town can choose to do with it. It's,
The real issue is when you're dealing with state funds and federal funds.
Right.
Or if there's another project where
if we had a demolition delay bylaw, that might trigger a review if there's a National Register property on it. We don't have one, so.
So legally, just hypothetically, just so I understand, this is the wood studio, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And if, say, a plan came in, this is what you guys want, with if a plan came into play to put a rec building there, you could do that legally?
It's our understanding.
That's your understanding, but could we verify that before we vote on this?
It's not touching the actual physical property itself.
I understand
the
that, but you
structure.
know how the feds are, and once something's on the books, that technically goes with that studio.
It's only the structure
lot of
itself
land.
that's impacted. The land itself should not.
Just the building.
It's a building, it's the building, not the land.
No, I understand, no, but it's on the land, it's all part of that lot.
And so Tom, I think just, if I may,
Yeah,
Madam
sure.
Chair, just one thing that, I think the concerns about the rest of the land. I think what the town can do is we can subdivide our land, we go to the planning board and subdivide it. So if you wanted to, for example, and I'm gonna practice my weatherman skills, but using my cursor to, maybe if hypothetically you just
Draw a
cut the
line right there
land
at
here
the bottom of the hill.
and make the parcel much smaller.
Yep.
Right, and maybe just incorporate the remaining to this 5.5 acres that's here as part of the memorial.
Absolutely, I would be
could do
one hundred
something
percent
like
on
that.
board with that. That's what scares me, is when you look at that lot, there's a lot of land that goes all the way down to the track. That's a big space of property for the studio. I'm all for the studio, you wanna include the studio, that's fine, it's the land I'm concerned with.
I think that, I hear your point, Tom, I think that land is also a big hill, so it's
Well,
not
that
as,
doesn't
it's not as easy to develop as the flat land would be, but I hear your concern, I don't
Yeah.
wanna mitigate that at all. I also wanna point out that not only through master plan has there been a lot of conversation with historical preservation in town, and we hear a lot that well, we've never done it, so why should we start? And for a whole lot of things, not only for historical preservation, but a lot of things, and I think that that's a bad mentality for us as a community to have. We kind of had that even with the budget discussion tonight, it's always been this way, so why should we change? And I think it's not doing us as a community any favors to not change our thinking.
It's also not entering into a deal or a legal document that won't allow us to use, again, hypotheticals are great. I have no problem with the wood studio and the house, that's great, but it's that plot of land, I didn't even know it was that big. I knew it was big, I didn't know it was that big.
I think also, I wanna point out that from the town center study that was done through COVID, really pointed out having the potential economic development impact of a robust wood house and studio option available. I would hate to lose the wood studio as a meeting place for town because I think it's a huge resource for boards and committees as well as individuals. I participated in a meeting there with CMRPC because it was a convenient meeting spot that was a little bit more private than some others, but it's still a town-related business.
Can we talk to zoning and see if legally I know what we're throwing around hypotheticals. Is there any way we could verify that if down the road, if everything stays the way it is, if a development plan came into play where we could cut into that hill a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit near the basketball courts, that you could legally do that? Because if we're going on to that plot, I'd hate to do this whole study and then the federal government says, oh, no, sorry, can't do that. I mean, that would be a waste, you know?
There's no change in ownership in that property by putting them together on, excuse me, on the National Historical Site.
Right.
There's no change in ownership
Oh, I know.
of the property.
No, I agree with you 100%, but I know that I've dealt with a few properties in the state, when it's historical, it's
Well, if there's no
very
change in
difficult.
ownership, why are you concerned that that couldn't be developed?
Because the federal government always concerns me.
We're talking about Massachusetts first,
Exactly.
and why couldn't that parcel be divided? Leave a third of that property, of that acre, to the wood studios.
That's what I'm talking about. I
Right,
think,
right.
I just wanna verify that can be done. I'm all for that, absolutely.
Yes, some examples, an example I think that everyone's aware of is the Heights property, for example, has been subdivided. And I think the town did that before,
But none of that is historical, right? Is that technically historical?
well, it should be.
It's not, though, but it's not.
You wanna talk about preservation of assets,
Right.
that should have been preserved.
But it's not, yeah. Everyone thought it was, the same way everyone in town thought this was for the last 100 years. But it's not. So that's the only thing I'm asking. I'm not fighting this. I'm not out to get the studio. I'm just saying, with that size lot land, we just agreed to have a plan to look into that space. I just wanna make sure legally we're not kinda shooting ourselves in the foot here.
Sure.
For both of us, for you guys and us.
And, go ahead.
Jen just said it a few minutes ago, but I wanna reiterate what she said. It's just the building, it's not the land. The distinction
Structure.
of a historic building, that's it, it's just the building.
If there are any restrictions, like if federal funds were to be used for improvements to it, it would only be regarding the structure itself, not the property.
And I'm just asking my fellow members of the board, can we verify that that's true before we sign off on this? I'm not against it, I'm just saying, we're saying if and hypothetically, that's what's been going on for the last 100 years. Hypothetical, everyone thought this was historical until, 2 years ago when we figured out it wasn't? Is there a way to, do you check with the zoning board, do you check with the legal department?
Yeah, I think just a simple question to town council with these hypotheticals.
Right, that's all I'm asking, that's all I'm asking. I'm not against the plan, I'm not,
I think one of the things too is taking a look at it, when you say it is forever, it should. Rutland is filled with multi-generational families, all of us here. Some 8, 9 generations that have been here, and having an opportunity to have something that is a place where our children and our grandchildren can connect to and connect to their heritage, that is a forever, they should have that is a balance. We
Absolutely.
have watched this town develop at breakneck speed and losing farms and losing lands and
Absolutely.
losing open space. So to give something to the folks who worked tirelessly to get this together, who clearly will give great opportunity to securing grants and starting the Junior Historical Society, which they've talked about for, the younger members in town. This is so essential. It really is.
I have no problem with the structure, but like I said earlier when we were talking recreation, every board, committee, and group wants it all or nothing. And all I'm saying is I'm thinking down the road, when I'm not here, when no one in this room is gonna be here, the town is still gonna be responsible for the building and the land. All I'm saying is let's try and do what's best for the whole town. That's my only objective of it. I'm not looking to take the studio or knock it down, but like I said, I'm glad that map was up there, cause I didn't realize it went all the way down to the track. And it is that plot of land, so you'd have to legally separate the wood studio, how, you know.
But not today,
No, not
not
today.
tomorrow, not 50 years from now.
Right.
You don't know, we don't know what the future is.
Right, we don't.
And so that we have to work for today.
Well, we got a
And it
little time,
doesn't
we can
change,
check.
and it doesn't change the ownership of the property.
Well, but with all due respect, you're not an attorney, I'm not an attorney.
No, I'm not an attorney.
And neither am I, and that's all I'm saying, what you and I think doesn't make it so.
It's not what I think, it's just not, I know it's not a change in ownership, that I know.
It's the town's, right.
Corinne, and
Did
then I-
somebody say that even if it was designated historical site, is that what we're calling it, historical? You could tear it down?
The only restrictions that are if you've already utilized federal or state money to do anything with regards to the property, it would probably, it would trigger some sort of red flag for a review for what you are looking to do. And they could, so if you are looking to tear it down, they would wanna, why, and assuming they would have some input on whether or not that was okay to do at that point.
Okay, so if they wanted to know why, we say, well, it's illegal the way it's set up, so we're gonna tear it down so it no longer affects this stuff.
So I realized that I think you were coming here tonight hoping to have a definite answer. It sounds like the board has a couple questions that we would like to have answered before providing a letter, but it sounds like Paul, I haven't heard from you, I wanna hear your perspective, but it sounds like people were amenable to providing a letter, just getting the answers.
It's not gonna change what's there. In other words, okay, so, the ball field is still gonna be there, the swimming pool's still gonna be there, and, the parking lot and the town hall are still gonna be there. So I mean, it's not that we're turning everything upside down or inside out, we're just trying to make a simple adjustment to what's there. And I just don't see at this point in time that, it's gonna make any difference because it's still the town of Rutland property, that whole area.
I just feel that we're missing an opportunity to get grant money if we don't proceed with getting the house and the studio together to submit to the Mass Historical.
And I wanna hear from-
We're missing opportunity for
wanna-
money, which we talked about, took up most of the meeting tonight.
So I guess, I wanna hear from Austin, but I guess one of my questions is there a deadline coming up for grants that we're not aware of that, because if we push this off till next meeting, if we get some answers and then Austin, do you have,
Well, so just, I think respectfully for the board, you actually don't have a letter to approve tonight.
Right.
So I think, why don't we come back to the next meeting with an actual draft letter for the board to consider, so Harry could be here as well. And in the meantime, we will also reach out and get some of the answers and provide a report back to the board answering some of these questions that you've asked.
Yeah, if we could just get clarification,
And if you feel okay, you can sign the letter.
Absolutely, I'll sign it right then and there, how about that? As long as there's legal definition, clarification saying that if down the road something, takes a little bit of that land in order to get something done, it won't affect the studio, I'm all for, absolutely, I don't have anything against that. I just wanna make sure legally, we're not doing what respectfully I've seen Rutland do a lot, is shoot ourselves in the foot, right? Or what's that old saying? Cut our nose off to spite our face? I feel like this town does that. So that's all I'm asking. I'm asking, let's just get clarification and do it the right way.
So we could come back to next meeting with a draft letter.
and I think the draft letter would be similar to what we had
Yeah.
done in support of
Yeah.
the house, and if we can.
So just for clarification, is our office drafting a letter or is the commission?
We'll draft.
We will, okay.
And I think it would just be a similar template to what we did for putting the house on, it would just probably recognize the town as the legal parcel, but with the commission. Okay,
Thank you, guys.
thank you. We have a fee schedule review for the select board for the,
You guys can't leave though, there's only 50 minutes left, so you gotta,
I'm gonna stay just out of respect.
believe me, you don't wanna do that.
thank you all for coming and for staying.
Peter, do you wanna close the meeting?
Oh, yes, so for the Historical Commission, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
All right, Lynn moves.
Second.
Jen seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so moved, it's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What about this?
Moving on, we had the fee schedule review similar to the building department. I believe Austin and Tamika worked to review some of our other licensing fees. And Austin, if you wanna speak to it per your memo.
Yep, so, just overall with the budget process, we asked all departments to also take a look at the fee schedule. Asked Tamika to take a look at select board licenses. She did a really good job, did a survey, I think amongst some of the other executive assistants across the Commonwealth and received some helpful information. She has provided a memo in her analysis of our liquor licenses. We're also looking at common victual. We did receive a legal opinion from KP Law on that as well. Some of that is actually rooted in law and there's a lot more process to that. You have more flexibility on your liquor licenses, and I'll let Tamika speak to the proposed changes, but we are proposing some modest changes, very similar to the building department. We're not looking to be the highest, we're looking to be the average, pretty much. And these licenses are within your authority, and as also overall the governing body, it's your authority to be able to change those fees as well. And if Tamika, you have anything to add about what the recommendations are for each of the licenses?
Sure, so essentially, the changes that we're making also make them a bit more equitable amongst the license types that we have. So for example, a restaurant that sells wine and malt beverages was being charged more than a package store that could sell only wine and malt beverages. So this is gonna bring everybody, it's gonna make everybody equitable across the type of license that they have. But as Austin mentioned, this brings us more closer to the average across the state. There are certainly communities that are significantly higher than us. There are some that are lower, but this kind of puts us in the middle. I also tried to factor in the size of those communities as well. Of course, the ones that have more are the ones that have a much higher population. They have much more commercial business that they're working with. So our intention is not to make it cost prohibitive for our licensees, but just to kind of reiterate what Leah said, is to keep up with the cost of doing business essentially. We are still proposing to honor the half-year fee schedule that the select board had put in place a couple years ago, which is if you apply for a license from halfway through the year, so if you apply at the beginning of the calendar year through July, you would pay the full fee because your license would essentially be for the whole year. If you're applying after July 1st through the end of the calendar year, you pay 50% of the fee because it didn't seem equitable to charge somebody for an entire year when they're only getting half the year. And then of course, when their license comes to renew, they would then pay the next year for the full year. So as you'll see in the plan, the proposal just increases those 50%, based on the increase on the other side. And as Austin mentioned, we are also looking into the common victular license because currently our fee does not cover the cost of doing business. The cost of the legal ad in the paper alone exceeds the $50 fee that we charge. The average across the state is $100. Pursuant to Mass General Law, it cannot be greater than $100. However, there are some restrictions where it's a little bit more than just the board voting to increase that fee. So we are working with town council to figure out how we go about and do that the right way, because it's possible we may have done it the wrong way in the past. And that's why we're where we're at now anyways. So we are gonna continue to work on that and bring that back to you guys at a later time.
Thank you, Tamika and Austin for working on this. Tamika, I know it's a lot of time and effort, and I appreciate you reaching out to the other communities and spending time for that. And I know it's as I reiterated, or I said earlier, I just wanna reiterate, it's one of the select board's, I think, ongoing goals for staff across the board to periodically review our fees to ensure that we're staying with the cost of doing business. And I appreciate being mindful that it's hopefully not cost prohibitive to the businesses. But also we need to make sure that we're covering our expenses on the town side. So I appreciate that. Does anyone have any questions for Tamika or Austin? If not, I would entertain a motion to adopt the revisions to the select board fee schedule as presented effective March 1st, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
Any other conversation? Roll call. Paul?
Mattson, aye.
Ledger I.
Galvin aye.
Whitman, aye. Thank you again, and keep us updated with the common vic stuff and, you know, as that moves forward, I think especially the ones where we have posting requirements, it's important to make sure that we're staying on just even the cost of postage and advertising as printed press becomes less and less prominent.
Absolutely. So one thing that we have implemented in our office to shadow what some of the other boards and committees do is we do ask for applicants to provide pre-stamped envelopes for the number of abutter notifications that we have to send out. So the applicant is covering the cost of the postage. But as you said, we do still incur the cost of printing those notices, and the average cost of an ad in the Telegram and Gazette, which is the most basic language, is about $65. And right now we're only charging a $50 fee. Just anticipatorily, this is likely gonna have to be a warrant article for special town meeting.
Okay.
Excuse me, for annual town meeting.
Yeah.
But we'll work with town council to see how to do that.
Thank you. Moving on, we have the request of a letter of support from the Ware River Watershed Advisory Committee. I don't know if you recall, this has been an ongoing discussion with the Ware River Watershed Advisory Committee and DCR. The Ware River Watershed Advisory Committee really advocates for maintaining vehicle access throughout the DCR owned property, the state park and the prison camps, Ware River Watershed entirety. DCR really pushes to lock down the access. And so the WRWAC has asked that we again provide a letter of support for maintaining open access. We had done this previously, I believe in, I don't remember what year.
February 2023.
Okay, thank you.
Almost exactly 2 years ago.
Yeah, and so this comes up obviously very periodically, and we're fortunate to have an active Ware River Watershed Advisory Committee that really tries to work with the state but also advocate for the communities. We have a draft letter that's essentially what we had sent in 2023 as presented. This request had come through Darren Ross, who is one of our representatives on WRWAC, and I believe all community members from WRWAC are being asked for similar language for that level of advocacy. Is there any questions or comments? Darren, I think, was hoping to attend, but I imagine with the cold weather, he is stuck at work. I don't know for sure. Hearing none, I would move to send a letter of support to the DCR on behalf of the Ware River Watershed Advisory Committee regarding their public access management plan as presented.
So moved.
Motion and a second. Roll call, Paul.
Pardon me, Mattson, aye.
Ledger I.
Galvin aye.
Whitman, aye. Thank you. We have, Austin, is it okay if we move to the Board of Public Works review of stormwater first? We have a number of stormwater abatement requests in our packet. There are quite a few. We have a number that are a few that feel that they either don't directly benefit from stormwater management as far as culverts or drains, or that they take care of their own kind of rainwater, and so they shouldn't be assessed the fee. I believe most of them were recommended to be denied based on our policy of every developed parcel is assessed the fee. It's not a benefit as to who's receiving what specific service, but it's a town-wide benefit that is mandated by the state and the federal, the DEP and the federal EPA that will continue to build. I believe that there is one that that was suggested to be abated because it was, for some reason, ended up in the system as 2 parcels, although it was a single parcel. It was just listed twice, and so they were double billed. So the double bill is being recommended as being abated. We can go through, I think we need to go through them individually for the motions, but the first one that I have is 30 Finn Park Road. As presented, per the recommendation of DPW. They recommend that we deny as it's a developed parcel. Sorry, it was service address for 23 Finn Park, I'm sorry. So does the board have any conversation on these, or are we content to move with the recommendations of DPW and the treasurer collector as presented?
I'm content to move with the regular recommendations of DPW.
So then I would entertain a motion to deny the abatement of 23 Finn Park Road. Is it okay if we bundle them all together? 31 Bushy Lane.
I don't see 23.
It's
a little bit confusing because the
mailing address is different than the service address.
30
Yeah.
Finn, but it's showing 23 Finn Park down below. Yeah.
the mailing address is in the top box, but the actual service address is
Yeah,
in the second
another one.
box. There's one for 23 Finn Park, there's one for 30 Finn Park, but they're both the same property owner.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So I would entertain a motion to deny the abatements for 30 Finn Park, 23 Finn Park, 31 Bushy Lane, 143 A and B Kenwood Drive. Sorry guys. And 176 Maple Ave, unit 128. And I believe 41 Bushy is the other one, is that correct?
Irish.
That's correct. Is it, 41 Irish.
Irish Lane or?
Sorry, yeah, Irish.
Sorry, that was my mistake, I wrote it wrong on your thing.
No, I saw it in my packet, so
I
yeah.
left them for too long, I got.
No, you're fine. So those, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are denials.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second,
Conversation? Roll call. Paul.
that's an aye.
Ledger,
Galvin, aye.
Whitman, aye. Again, with, I'm sorry, but the policy is developed parcels.
Just a question, we certainly don't need to have a discussion or decision tonight, but we have received the draft rules and regulations for stormwater. I think there's an interesting case that folks have made, particularly folks that live 176 Maple Ave condos, for example. There's an argument that that's one parcel, however, the way that we classify them is they're separate parcels. As we are working on these rules and regulations, I'm just curious about what the board how the board wants to address those. If you principally agree that it's one parcel and maybe we do some sort of calculation for that larger parcel and then that's then passed on to the condo owners, I mean, actually, maybe we just avoid this discussion now.
Yeah.
We can put this on an agenda item for you to have a full board discussion, but it's an interesting case. I'll have to see what some other communities that have stormwater authorities, how they've addressed it, because it's interesting.
It's a valid complaint.
Absolutely.
Concern, I mean.
Absolutely, yeah. There's other ones too. I know, for example, town of Franklin, if you have a stormwater system on your property, you can receive up to a 50% reduction in your stormwater bill, things like that I think maybe we should consider in your Board of Public Works capacity, but.
I'm not opposed to it, especially as we've had this under our belts for a year and a half now. And kind of more and more communities are doing this also, that we can kind of look and see how others are doing it as well. One of my comments just for the larger parcels is there generally tends to be a lot more impervious structures on them.
Yeah.
And so how that could be assessed if it's not an individual unit, but also taking into account the greater impervious
And I think
areas.
that's where we wanna get to at some point.
Yep.
Right, is, you know, we start with the simple fee and then as we build up resources, whether it's through staffing or just, you know, contracting it out, we actually have a specific calculation. So Tamika's house, she's got that nice long driveway, is maybe different than, well, Leah, you probably have a nice long driveway, you've got a nice driveway. Paul, I don't know what your driveway looks like, but let's pretend it's short. You should pay less than Tamika, because you have less of a driveway. We're just not there yet.
Sounds complicated.
It is,
Yeah.
but they do it, right? And a lot of them use mapping,
Yep.
right? So there's like systems out there that can look at everyone and can do some sort of calculated formula that can tell you exactly how much you're gonna pay.
Yep.
We're just not there yet. I think we will get there at some point, but something to work towards and consider.
Thank you. And we have one abatement that is recommended from both DPW and the treasurer collector to be, and assessor to be abated, because as I mentioned, this was a parcel that for some reason was had two accounts linked to the same to the same parcel. So the recommendation is that one of those bills would be abated, so they're still paying their one fee but not the double fee. So I would entertain a motion to abate the one parcel fee for 143 Pleasantdale. Is there a second? Second, any other conversation? And I believe that the account number is referenced in the
Yes,
in the email thread also, so
it is.
thank you.
Yep, so we'll have that.
Roll call, Paul?
Mattson, aye.
Ledger, aye.
Galvin, aye.
Whitman, aye. Thank you. And thank you to DPW and treasurer collector and assessors and Tamika and Austin. I'm sure you guys are all fielding all the questions and feelings about the stormwater. So I appreciate the work that you're all doing for that. And I think, Austin, to your point, maintaining an ongoing dialogue for how we're running that utility is healthy and expected given its youthfulness. So thank you. Moving on, we have a draft policy review for Wachusett Leadership Group. I think, we don't need to spend a lot of time on it.
Well,
Do you
I
wanna
think
introduce
just
it?
respectfully, so I know that Harry has talked to me a lot about this. If it's okay, maybe we delay this discussion. Cause I know he has a lot of comments on this and feels very strongly about it. I think just in fairness to him, maybe we can delay this discussion to a future.
And that's fine, I just wanted to introduce it and kind of put it out there that Austin has put together a Wachusett Leadership Group policy proposal that would essentially work to create a better collaborative process among the 5 Wachusett towns in the district, from kind of putting some of the more of the onus on the elected officials. Right now, I think there's a good working relationship among the administration, but I think having a dedicated piece for the elected and appointed officials would be nice. So thank you, Austin, and we can add that to our next agenda. I don't wanna be missing your town administrator update. I will not have any comments or announcements. I think a lot of mine came out throughout the meeting anyway. But go ahead, Mr. Administrator.
So, well, does anyone else have anything before I take over? I'll be quick. So I provided a written report as well, but just to breeze through some of those items. Dispatch Director Moradi and I met with the administrations and the operations, for the regional dispatch operation. This board allowed us to move forward with a study to convert from a hosted model to a district model. So currently Rutland operates as the host community for our regional dispatch. A district model, it becomes its own governance structure, and we are, very similar to the
regional school district or a water authority, we are a member of that district. However, the governance structure is set up a little bit differently, so some of the concerns that we have with the school district, for example, are much different. So we presented that draft feasibility study and report to the administrators and the police and fire chiefs from each of the communities. And there was consensus among the group to continue moving forward with that. So the next step is for the town administrators. We'll be meeting on the 26th of this month in the town of Barry to start negotiating an agreement. That ultimate agreement needs to be approved by each of the town select boards unanimously for the district to take place. So ultimately, it's gonna come back to you. We'll provide the report, but we'll also provide the draft district agreement. And I just wanna be clear, well, let's say all 5 boards approve, the district is in place, but there's still a transition there. So on the town side, for example, all of the current town of Rutland employees need to transition over to the district, so there's a lot there. It wouldn't just happen overnight and we figure it out. There's planned within the district agreement, there's a transition process there as well. But I just wanna keep the board up to date on that, so I imagine there will be a few working sessions among the town administrators to draft that district agreement, and then we'll come back to you. As was mentioned earlier, the town budget meeting with town departments has been rescheduled to Thursday, March 6th at 6 p.m. Sounds like we're gonna have a need for another date to talk about that as well, so stay tuned. Something that's pretty cool, my wife thinks it's nerdy and weird, but I spent a lot of time this weekend being snowed in, working on, first and foremost, I think our budget book is a great tool for the community. We've never had it before, but I thought that there's an opportunity to kind of digitize that a little bit. Now, certainly it's not the full budget book, but I've created what I'm calling the Rutland Budget Portal. Very creative. But it's essentially everything that's in our budget book is now a digital version. I've also been, just to be honest, I've been testing with ChatGPT. AI is really interesting to me. I don't know how to make a website, but I just typed into ChatGPT, and actually I spent the entire day on Saturday and Sunday doing this. Like I said, my wife's.
That is nerdy.
It is nerdy, man. I'll tell you. But it was kind of cool, and I'm kind of proud of it. It's not the most beautiful thing, but it's interesting. So and there's still a lot missing. I'm still working on revenue. But if you go to budget.rutlandma.gov, there's a summary page here, high-level overview. There's interactive charts here, so you can kind of hover over and see this. You can also, for example, if you would say, what's the proportionate share, you can click on something and hide it. So I just hid the education, shows the breakdown there. On the expense page, that's where you get into the detail. So same thing, like this is a line chart. Not the biggest fan of this, I'll work on it. But you can also hide this and you can see the growth from FY21 moving forward. Below here is a summary. I know, man, I'm sorry. And then this is a full table with all of our line items for our general fund budget. If you want to skip to something, you can click here and skip to that and you can see all the detail. It's just the start of something. Again, I was bored. I was done shoveling and I said, I want to work on something. Go ahead, sorry.
I've seen pictures of your wife. You were snowed in and you did this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, Kathleen.
Yeah. I just got derailed a little bit, but I want to build. I want to build on this. I imagine at some point we'll include the capital improvement budget in the plan here. I also think that there's an opportunity to show the forecast and allow some kind of interactive work there. It's just me testing AI, but also trying to develop a tool that I think will be helpful for staff in the community. So it's live now. Again, it's a work in progress. I still have a lot to add to it. Need to add our revenue. But I just thought it was something that's interesting and maybe will be useful, whether it's for one person or many people. Always trying to think of ways to be transparent and make us better. So there's that.
I love it, Austin. Thank you. If possible, this is just, is it possible to do those same categories as a percent of the budget? Not right now, but do you know what I mean? Like that education is roughly, let's say 60%. I don't know what public safety is, what general government is, you know, the percent of the total budget.
Yeah, so I asked, it's funny. A pie chart, right?
Yeah.
I asked my wife and she's like, pie charts are nerdy. I'm like, this entire thing is nerdy.
Nerds, we like it.
I know,
I know.
yeah. No, yeah, definitely. I
Does she
think,
know that we're nerds?
yeah, well, if she's, never mind. No, I think that that's a good idea. I mean, I was trying to kind of show that essentially here, right? You can see how much is education, but
Yeah.
I think a pie chart or something similar, I think also is a good way to show that. But I am open to any sort of feedback that people have on this. If you think there are some things that are missing, what's really cool about this is this can also be easily maintained in the future. So when we're talking about FY '27, quite literally it's just uploading the budget and everything just updates automatically.
That's
So
awesome.
at some point it becomes live, and real time. Which is kind of interesting. I also envision like there's ways that we can do like dashboards and things like that. So it's just the start. We're getting a lot of snow and again,
It's just on the website now?
it's not on the website now,
Okay.
but this link is live. So
Okay.
budget.rutlandma.gov is live. So we can publish it and show people it. Ideally, I wanna finish the revenue thing first so we can people can actually see, so the summary page will have expenses and then revenue, and at some point like showing like free cash and things like that, like where we are. Just to kind of further our financial transparency tools, so kind of interesting,
Thank you.
thanks. There was a lot of trial and error, like I won't get into it, but it took a long time.
I will say it's helpful for someone who tends to be on the go a lot and not always have the paper documents accessible, to be able to go to a website and pull information up rather than have to flip through a book or go to a PDF or something, especially when things are so fluid. So thank you.
I would say don't use your phone, it's not, I haven't figured that out yet. AI is smart, but it's also kind of dumb sometimes. Like I asked, can you just make this friendly on iPhones, and it completely broke it, so, work in progress there, but,
Cause you need Apple AI to do that one for you.
yeah, it's true, you gotta pay for that too. But again, if anyone has any questions or comments on it, just shoot me a message, it's kind of interesting, so it's my little hobby. A weird hobby, I know, but thanks. So I'll take that down, so I'm not embarrassed anymore, okay.
Don't be
Find your
embarrassed.
people here,
Yeah,
it's
that's
okay.
The senior center kitchen and cafeteria is still under construction, they're awaiting delivery on some items, flooring and cabinetry. Most of the kind of rough carpentry is done at this point. It's gonna be a couple more weeks for the delivery of those materials. Our Meals on Wheels operation is still operating, they're using the kind of the corner of the cafeteria as their office space. They're not prepping anything on site, everything's coming already prepped and they're just picking up on site. So just slowly but surely we're getting there on there. As was mentioned by, sorry, do you have a question? Yep.
What's the cost to the town for this?
Just our deductible, so what was it,
5,000?
5,000?
How are we paying for that?
Our budget. Yeah. We're gonna find a place for it somewhere, unfortunately. Some communities have a little bit of a line item to be able to pay for insurance deductibles, but we're gonna find a source for it. Do you have a suggestion?
Not at the moment.
Okay, alright. Unfortunately, the same thing happened with the library and some of other losses, right? We just end up having to absorb it in the budget. As was mentioned earlier by Harold, we promoted Dennis Bergen, to full-time electrical inspector. He previously served as the alternate to Lester. He's been a certified electrician for many years. He's also the electrical inspector in the town of Oakham, where he holds many roles. He's the town moderator, former select board member, and also a current select board candidate. So he just loves local government.
Sounds like Oakham.
As you can tell, yeah. So I just wanna welcome him. he's been great helping us get caught up and, as was mentioned by Harold, gonna help us get on the right path for some of our fee structures, things like that as well. And just wanna notify the board that our office did receive a letter from the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. To begin, it's an annual assessment of our subsidized housing inventory, SHI inventory. So, Mass General Law, Chapter 40B, communities must have at least 10% of their housing stock classified as low to income or affordable, low to moderate income or affordable. Currently, Rutland is at just over 2.5%, which is approximately 86 units. So when we are below 10%, a developer can then apply for what's called a comprehensive permit with the Zoning Board of Appeals. A comprehensive permit allows the state to override local zoning bylaws. Some of the examples are lot size minimums if we had them, density limits, height or size limitations, for example. So it's important for a community to be mindful of where they are among the 10%. And we do this every year. So again, as our housing stock grows, which it is growing, our percentage is getting smaller if we're not continuing to develop or be proactive about developing or advocating for affordable housing.
Austin, can I interrupt you
Yes,
for 1
sir.
second?
Yep.
Does that apply, I mean, you're in a town that's, the 10% was lowered, right? It was 20% at one time, I think, but not that that matters, but is that just multifamilies and condos, or how can you do that with like colonials and stuff?
Yeah, so there's a lot of detail to that. You can certainly have ownership of units that are classified as affordable. They're usually deed restricted, but where the town usually gets to maximize its units is through apartments or cottage style. So 25% of ownership is considered affordable. If it's a rental, so if it's apartments, 100% of those units. So there's just getting more towards your 10%.
Right.
There's a mix. Most of these are apartments, but I think a handful of these are ownership of the 86 units that we have now. I can get, if the board is interested, I can get you the list of what our classified affordable units are. And it's also been discussed at the planning board, the monitoring for like ownership is just much more challenging. Usually communities end up having to kind of pay someone to do the monitoring for them, just because we don't have the staff to get all the paperwork in every year. Is this affordable? Are they meeting the income limits?
Yeah, it's just hard for me to picture, I don't wanna go off on this, but it's just hard for me to envision a developer comes in and does what they, in town and builds 20 colonials, and 10% of those have to be
No,
sold
that's,
affordable housing?
no, 10% of our entire housing stock.
Yeah, so to give you an idea, Tom, we would need, it's several hundred units to get to 10%.
Don't quote, I think our full build out is almost 5,000 developable lots, I think, and so 10% of that would
500.
500-ish.
So it becomes more of a permitting issue as far as like before they're built? I mean, at our stage now, right? I mean.
Well, so, what the town can do, and, a lot of towns have done this, it's called the local initiative program, where they've been kind of proactive in saying, hey, listen, we know that we're well below 10%. We are encouraging a developer to come in and get us as close as possible to the 10%. So Town of Sterling, for example, had it's called a LIP, Local Initiative Program. They engaged a developer, and that developer built, first of all, they minimized the amount of bedrooms, because the concern was the impact on the school district, right? So they had, I think, their max bedroom size was a 2-bedroom. Most of them were studios or 1-bedrooms. They bring them in, if it's a local initiative program, the developer has a vested interest to work with the community, so you don't have to go through the comprehensive permit process and override a lot of these zoning bylaws. Because there's also a concern that 40B projects are gonna be detrimental to, for example, the character of the community. Well, where you can do that is you can try to work directly with the developer and say, hey, listen, I don't want you to build a massive tower complex, right? I want you to make it fit within the aesthetics of the community. I want you to, yeah, exactly. I want you to minimize the bedroom counts, things like that, right? So you can work with them. But if you don't, there is the risk that someone can come in and build a massive tower or wherever they want and it overrides local zoning on that. And I will say that the zoning board of appeals, while they're the governing authority for it, they're also very limited in the ability to deny a comprehensive permit. Pretty much the state runs that process. And everything flows through and is run by the state on it, so, yeah.
And
So, you know.
for years, the state has been very pro-housing. I mean, through multiple iterations of administration at the state level, the state has been very pro-housing, so.
So I just wanted to make you aware that this is ongoing. We will, the planning department is working on responding to this and getting the official counts back to EOHLC. And once we get our certified SHI, we'll make you aware of what that new number is. I'd imagine it's gonna go down, just because we know how much building has occurred over the past few years.
I have a couple questions for that, and you might not know the answer, and I don't wanna spend a lot of time, but
Yep.
For a local initiative program, is that something driven by the select board, by planning board, by zoning board? Like, how does that, and because I know a number of years ago, I think town was presented the opportunity for a housing production plan. We are a housing choice community, but we failed the housing production plan, or planning board chose to not move forward with it. I don't remember the specifics. And so I don't know how kind of all of those pieces fit into kind of a local initiative program friendly affordable housing.
Yeah, so I mean, it usually ends up being kind of it's a great question, it's just an overall policy decision. You know, it's not like you guys have to make a vote or anything, but just some sort of support, whether it's by consensus or if you wanted to make a motion that, hey, we were interested in pursuing it. Then that allows us, and particularly our planning department, to be able to have those conversations with developers and say, hey, if you're interested, our board will be interested.
Stay ahead of it, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, also, I don't think it's a bad idea to engage the planning board on this, to make them aware. They did also receive a copy of this as well, so I would hope or imagine at their future planning board meeting, they're also made aware of this and maybe have the same discussion, but something to consider.
Well, and I guess that's kind of.
Especially as we have some town-owned land possibly, that could be a good.
68?
Yeah.
Well, and because there's tax incentives and
Yep.
and everything, so if there's any consideration to work with the state for any additional benefits or anything, I think you and I.
Oh, yeah.
And just, you know, I think for example, apartments, you know, I don't think we've done a great job of creating affordable, let's say, apartments for example, our vulnerable population, like our seniors. There's what's called an age-friendly community, where aging in place. We've heard, I think especially my couple of years that I've been here, I've heard that, you know, you're pushing the seniors out, for example. Well, what if we had options for them to go to? More options for them to go to that's affordable.
Downsize, yeah.
We don't have a housing authority.
Right.
Right? So tools that are available for the community to maintain our residents and not lose them to some other communities, we should consider. So whether it's a 40B, some of the other options. I think it's a good faith effort that we can demonstrate to the community, especially folks like our seniors. But also, like, I'll be honest, I don't think I could afford to live in Rutland right now.
I couldn't. I built
No.
12 years ago, I couldn't afford now.
I was at the senior center on Friday and we were on Zillow looking at houses. There's a house off of Maple Ave that is probably like all of your houses, colonials.
Yeah.
$800,000.
It's insane. Yeah, it's insane.
It is insane.
With no land.
Right.
And interest rates.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You know, so I think that we've got some work to do on creating some more affordable options for people.
And I guess.
Sorry, Leah.
No, I 100% agree and support this, and I think I've been on plenty of planning board meetings where I've asked about an affordable housing piece for even the subdivisions, and it's not gonna get us there, but, and there's been some pushback, I think Jen has asked the same questions. And that's, I guess, one of my considerations is what authority can we as a select board do versus need to put in planning board's court, because I think sometimes we look at kind of the entirety of what town needs and where we need to be or need to be going, and then planning board has something, a much different perspective, and that creates that rift. And so I just would wanna have a better idea as far as, you know, housing authority, housing production plan, all of those kind of conversations. Does it sit with planning, or can it be select board, or can it be both? I don't.
Maybe that's a good future joint discussion.
Yeah, and I think in the past, CMRPC has worked closely with the board, or the town for the housing choice community, and I believe the housing production plan as well, so we can always reach out to them also. Thank you, Austin.
Yep.
Does anybody have any other questions for Austin, the town administrator update? Our upcoming meetings, we have March 6th is the joint meeting with FinCom for at least the first half of the department head.
That we weren't doing March 6th.
Yeah, we're gonna
do an extra
something else
date on top of March 6th.
We're gonna do March 6th and at least one other date probably.
like two.
I thought we were combining everything
Now-
into one meeting.
Well, now because we want the $2.1 million cut budget, the $1 million cut budget with $1 million override, and then the full, I'm gonna say the full override, the $2.5 million override budget. That would be 3 budgets from each department, so that would take longer time for the department reviews. Right?
That's my understanding.
Okay, so we're keeping March 6th for,
One more date, hopefully around there, so it can be timely, but.
And March 13th.
Then our upcoming regular meetings are March 3rd, March 17th, and March 21st. We have March 13th is our budget meeting with the school districts. Wachusett, and is Bay Path coming also? I'm not sure, Bay Path will be there. I will not be able to attend for sure on the 13th. So I will ask the other board members to kind of look at your schedules and let us know. I won't even be able to be available via Zoom. So if it's the presentation from the schools, I will watch the recording. But just to make sure if we will have a quorum or not, I think the meeting will go on regardless. I'm not sure what FinCom's availability is. I know at least one school committee member can't make it also. I haven't heard from others yet. So that's that. I know you have the kind of the poll for the FinCom department head meeting. I don't remember what those dates were. I don't know if there was another date around the 6th. I think not, right? 'Cause it was like,
So I guess my question to you guys is, while we have you here, would you be available on an off Monday to do it on the 10th? I hate to have them too far apart, but then, I don't know, do we do it before the 6th? Do we do it after the 6th? I know Tuesday nights are probably out for a lot of people because that's one of the busiest meeting nights. So I was thinking a Monday, Wednesday, that following Thursday is already taken.
Sorry, what's the 21st meeting again?
Our regular meeting.
it's a regular meeting.
So,
March 20,
I mean, if, I don't know, and we'd have to obviously.
21st is a Friday.
that's a Friday, March 21st.
No, so, yeah,
Leave that up then.
Huh?
I mean, if the board was available on March 5th, we could do 2 days in a row and just.
I'm sorry, if
Tom, that was a typo.
Is
She just
2
said
days really
31st. I'm sorry.
31st, okay.
gonna make a difference, that we can't just do everything on the 3rd, or push it out, everything out to one?
You wanna start earlier?
I would rather do one meeting than
Yeah.
spread it out. It
I think we
doesn't,
should start earlier. I'm just being honest. We're asking department heads to present 3 budgets. I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of questions about each particular budget. We presented one budget last year and it took us a couple hours.
Yeah, we were there a long time. We have 2 boards with feedback.
And now we're presenting 3 budgets.
Can't make it. Sucks.
Yeah.
Thank you. 6 o'clock.
Is starting earlier on the 6th an option for anybody? If we present that, of course, FinCom is still also a wild card in that too.
Thursdays are hard for me to, I will do what I can. I mean, I will take time off.
And Thursdays are the only day FinCom wants to do.
I know, and I have meetings that usually go at least until 5 on Thursdays. I usually duck out from that at 5, and oftentimes it can go till 6 or later. I will take vacation because
And I'm definitely Zoom at best on the sixth, so.
The 5th, is anybody available the day before?
I think I could,
Fifth
that
I
would
can
be a Wednesday. I think I could do a Wednesday if we wanted to do 2. I don't think I could do.
Earlier than 6 on Wednesday, I have a prior appointment.
So if we proposed the 5th and the 6th, it would be split department heads?
I would send, I mean, I could do that. That would, I think, be easier than an early start, but if we needed to do an early start on Thursday, then I could do that, but maybe see what.
I'm just trying to gauge the board while I have everybody
Right,
here, cause
yeah.
it's easier to at least have consensus from you guys to take to the finance committee, cause I think they're gonna lean towards Thursdays anyways, but in this case, it's not, we've already got Thursday, so we have to find another option. So if you're amenable to the 5th at 6 o'clock and then the 6th at 6 o'clock, I can propose that to the finance committee and see if they're available to do that, if you guys are amenable to that.
Yeah, I can make whatever work on my end. I would also just ask Harry, because he was the one.
It was his idea.
do our best.
Is any other future agenda request items? I don't wanna, I'm happy to hear them. We can also send them to me and Tamika and Austin. We obviously will continue the budget conversation. We have a lot of feedback from the building use policy. Maybe if we can kind of collate that and send it around for consideration. We have the surrounding communities, also building use policies as well. So I think the building use policy, I don't think it's the policy, I think it's the enforcement that's gonna be the challenge. Is there any other business to come before the board?
Nope.
Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. We can figure it out.
I'll surprise you when I do the minutes, who got what.
Roll call, Paul.
Matt's and I.
Ledger I.
Galvin aye.
Whitman I, 9:30.
We have stuff to sign.
Yeah, we have signature stuff, right?
There's not much.
Sign our lives away here again.